Chapter 2231. 2231 2231 Lord of the Endless Sea. Enter one by one and find a place to sit according to your strength. The next morning, a voice sounded in the sky above the endless sea. Tens of billions of people had gathered around the endless sea. When they heard the voice, they immediately flew toward the square that was formed by the formation above the endless sea. At the entrance, Wuxia, a member of the Dragon Protection Department of the Dragon Palace, led his subordinates to guard it. He held a trident in his hand and was about 3 meters tall. Each of his body exuded a powerful force. The Dragon Palace had destroyed the Eternal Twin Foxes, the Eternal Thunderbolts and the Eternal Seven Stars. The number of members who had lit the divine fire in the Dragon Palace had reached more than 2,000. Among them, 3,000 members had reached the peak of the demigod realm and possessed the combat power of a wisp of divine fire. In the past year, the Dragon Palace's strength had increased tremendously. Come on, let's go. I haven't seen the Dragon King yet. I'm finally lucky enough to see him today. I wonder what the Dragon King will announce today. Some people entered with curiosity, awe, and worry. To build such a huge and majestic square in just a few minutes, the Dragon Palace is really powerful. Some people entered the huge and majestic square, their eyes full of shock. At the front of the square there was a huge statue of a divine dragon. The 7-colored divine dragon was exuding a powerful majesty. Even a statue is exuding a terrifying aura. The forces that came and looked around with their eyes wide open. Those are the people from the Eternal Divine Leaf. The people from the Eternal Divine Leaf have arrived early. Some people looked to the left of the center and saw that there were already several million people gathered there. I heard that the 2 daughters of the Divine Leaf Master who went missing and died were raised by the Dragon King after they were resurrected. The relationship between the Eternal Divine Leaf and the Dragon King is very good. Some people heard some rumors and discussed in low voices. That's someone from the Eternal Qin clan. According to Divine Lord Shan Yu's wife, the Dragon King is the savior of Divine Lord Shan Yu. Now that the Dragon King has let the Eternal Qin clan control the western region, I'm really envious. That Divine Lord Shan Yu's wife is really lucky. Divine Lord Shan Yu is the youngest Eternal Divine Lord. Lucky? Then you don't know who the Mountain God Lord's wife is? The Mountain God Lord's wife is the biological sister of the Dragon King's only disciple, the Dragon Queen's disciple. Damn, I didn't expect the Mountain God Lord's wife to have such a deep background. The people who came in looked at the Eternal Qin clan's position and discussed animatedly. See, the one next to the Eternal Qin clan is the Dragon King's disciple. He has already ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. Only 7 wisps of divine fire? The power of 7 wisps of divine fire is a little low. What do you know? This disciple of the Dragon King is only in his 30s. You said that his power is a little low. Fuck, he lit 7 wisps of divine fire in his 30s? How is this possible? How is this possible? Discussions and exclamations could be heard as the various major forces walked toward the seats one by one. Make way, make way. Eternal Wind Expanse Master has arrived. He has personally brought his disciples here. At this moment, voices could be heard from behind, and some people hurriedly made way. The once 5 great God Lords of the Endless Star Field were now only left with God Lord Shinai and God Lord Fenghuan. Although Eternal Wind Expanse had submitted to the Dragon Palace, their strength had not decreased. Now, apart from the Dragon Palace and Eternal Divine Leaf, they were still the strongest. Even the Eternal Qin clan was much weaker than them. Hee. God Lord Wind Expanse, who was standing at the front, glanced around and walked straight toward the unknown. Little brother Xiao Ran, Mountain God Lord. God Lord Wind Expanse walked to the position next to the Eternal Qin clan and cupped his hands toward Xiao Ranshin and the others. God Lord Wind Expanse. The 2 immediately stood up and responded politely. Haha, there's no one around, right? Then we'll take our seats. God Lord Huanyu gestured to the seats next to him and said with a smile. God Lord Huanyu, Eternal Huanyu, please take your seats. Qin Feiyang raised his head slightly and said. Eternal Huanyu and the others sat next to him with smiles on their faces. More and more people gathered in the square. Soon there were more than 100 million people. The members of the Fox-marked Divine Clan are here. All of a sudden, surprised voices arose. At least tens of millions of people looked at the entrance. The Fox-marked Divine Clan is the one who has reached the sky in one step. some people said slowly. Walking past the members of the Fox-marked divine clan in front of so many people, they were filled with emotion. More than a year ago they had a glorious time. However, that glorious time was only in the western region. Now it was in the entire Boundless Star area. From the looks of the other forces, they could see how envious the Fox-pattern divine clan was. Hu Fei has really given birth to a good daughter. Some disciples of the Fox-pattern divine clan slightly raised their heads, their faces full of pride. The Hu-Wen celestial race had been walking forward, sitting next to the eternal divine leaf. In 2 hours, almost all the forces in the endless star field had arrived. Buzz. At this time, Divine Lord Shinai and his wife walked out from the seabed behind them, heading straight for the eternal divine leaf. The Dragon King is coming out. Seeing Divine Master Shinai and the rest coming out, some people thought to themselves, "Roar." At this moment, a dragon roar came from behind. Splash. On the surface of the water in front of them, figures slowly emerged. Wang Xian stood at the center and was surrounded by 10 girls. Prime Minister Gue stood at the right and front while a group of dragon guards accompanied him at the back. Wang Xian, who was draped in a colorful dragon robe, swept his gaze across everyone around him and walked forward indifferently. A group of girls and members of the Dragon Palace followed behind him. But when Wang Xian arrived at the front of the dragon throne, everyone from all the factions and demonic beasts stood up in unison, paying respects to the Dragon King. A deafening voice resonated in the sky above the boundless sea. All of them bowed and cupped their fists. Their faces were filled with respect. "Sit down." Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. His voice entered everyone's ears. "Thank you, Dragon King." Everyone from all the factions responded quickly and sat down on their seats. They looked at Wang Xian in awe and swept their gaze across everyone around him. That's the group of dragon queens. The 2 twins should be the daughters of the god of Shinai. As expected, the 2 daughters of the god of Shinai have a very high status in the Dragon Palace. That's Hu Yen from the Hu-Wen celestial race. Some of them saw the group of girls sitting on the dragon throne and imprinted it into their minds. This was an existence that they could not afford to offend. It was also someone they needed to please. Chapter 2232. 2232 On the battlefield of 2232 Divine Emperor. The Dragon Palace has gathered everyone here for no other reason. Firstly, the Dragon Palace will build a branch palace in the ocean of the life stars in the entire boundless galaxy. Secondly, from today onwards, all aquatic creatures will be able to break through the Dragon Gate. Those who break into the Dragon Palace will become disciples of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace will not be involved in the rest of the matters in the boundless galaxy. Please do not harm the heavens. Wang Xian's voice reverberated in everyone's mind. He didn't say too many things. The Dragon Palace was only in charge of the ocean in the boundless galaxy. The Dragon Palace couldn't do anything else. Currently, the Dragon Palace only had more than 50,000 disciples and 700 to 800 life planets in the boundless galaxy. In comparison, the Dragon Palace had too few people. It was already considered good enough to be able to control the ocean completely. Even if the Dragon Palace recruited a large number of members in the future, the number would only be more than 100,000 at most. Of course, there was a prerequisite. The devouring dragon in Ao Crab's body was not included. The devouring dragon in Ao Crab's body had now reached more than 1 million. However, this devouring dragon could not be compared to the ordinary members of the Dragon Palace. Next, the major forces offered congratulatory gifts to the Dragon King, the Dragon Palace, and so on. Every force that could enter this place had a few godly state experts. The items that they brought out were at least at the godly state level. The gifts that were sent over by so many forces were also extremely huge resources. They were even comparable to the treasure trove of an eternal level force. All kinds of treasures were sent over. At the last moment, even the Divine Leaf Master sent a gift. It was a withered sapling. When Wang Xian looked at the sapling, he could feel the ancestral tree trembling slightly. This made his eyes light up. However, Wang Xian did not look at it on the spot. The entire huge banquet lasted for about 5 hours. The Dragon Palace had prepared some food. More than 100 million people were dining together. Such a scene was extremely grand. Since the end of the banquet, it was time for countless aquatic creatures to celebrate. Countless aquatic creatures rushed toward the Dragon Gate crazily. They jumped through the Dragon Gate and turned into dragons. As long as they could enter the Dragon Palace and become disciples of the Dragon Palace, they would become existences that no one dared to provoke in the endless star field. In the next few days, thousands of new members of the Dragon Palace joined every day. The Dragon Palace also began to cultivate the aquatic creatures that joined. Currently, the number of berserk dragon species in the Dragon Palace had reached a few hundred, and there were also 50 to 60 thorn dragon species. The strength of the Dragon Palace was improving rapidly every day. The Windbreaker Tree? Windbreaker Tree. In the Dragon King's Hall of the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian stood in front of the ancestral tree and looked at the branch of the Windbreaker Tree. His eyes were sparkling. This branch was given to him by the Divine Leaf God that day. This branch was one of the 3 branches that the Divine Leaf God had obtained when he was given a great opportunity. One of the branches was almost withered while the other branch of the Eternal Divine Tree was nurtured and placed in his Eternal Divine Kingdom. The last one was this Windbreaker Tree. According to the Divine Leaf God, this Windbreaker Tree was placed at the center. Its level is comparable to the soul-returning wood, endless wood. Other than increasing the cultivation speed of the members of the Wind Attribute Dragon Palace by 4 times, it doesn't seem to be of much use at the moment. Wang Xian mumbled to himself. Now he had the Endless Wood, the Soul-Returning Wood, the Serval Tree and the Nirvana Lightning Tree. Each of these trees possessed powerful abilities. Especially the Soul-Returning Wood. My young friend, you have almost settled your matters here. When are you leaving? This area is still too remote. The spiritual energy is still considered average, but it's a little difficult to comprehend the laws. There are also fewer resources. With your talent, if you stay here for 1 more day, you will be wasting 1 day of your life. At this moment, the phantom of the God of Heaven's formation appeared before Wang Xian and spoke to him. Go to that bright land. Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling. That's right. I'll find a backer for you when you get there so that you can increase your strength quickly. Also, didn't your little girlfriend also enter that place? It's a good time to go and look for her. The Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said directly. Yes, we have to go, but we have to wait. Wang Xian looked hesitant. Now that the Dragon Palace was the king of the boundless galaxy, and the Dragon Palace controlled most of the resources, the members of the Dragon Palace would improve very quickly in the future. However, it would be much more difficult to advance to the level of the Eternal Divine Lord. In fact, the current resources were no longer sufficient to support the members of the Dragon Palace to reach the level of the Eternal Divine Lord. Regardless of whether it was the resources of the boundless galaxy that had reached its limit or the matter of the beautiful green moon, Wang Xian had to go to that dazzling place. However, he wasn't planning to go there for the next 2 years. He had to accompany a group of girls and be fully prepared. Since young friend wants to wait, let's wait a little longer. During this period of time, you can learn the rest of the formations. It was obvious that the God of Formation wanted Wang Xian to inherit his Tao of Formations. Even if Wang Xian wanted to be his disciple. He also knew that Wang Xian's inheritance wasn't something that his Tao of Formations could compare to. Unless he was a great wizard, he would only be qualified to take Wang Xian as his disciple. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head. Although the art of formations was of little value to Wang Xian in terms of combat, it was very good in terms of support. Especially when it came to searching for people and targeting enemies. In the following period of time, Wang Xian accompanied a group of girls every day. When he was free, he would follow the God of Formation to cultivate formations. The group of girls also knew that Wang Xian might be leaving after a period of time. They also cherished the time when he was around. Time passed slowly. A year or 2 years passed in the blink of an eye for them. 3 years later, Wang Xian brought the group of girls back to the Dragon Palace from the outside. During these 3 years, they toured more than half of the boundless star field and toured more than half of the mountains and rivers of the boundless star field. During the 3 years of free time, Wang Xian had also simulated the laws of formations and established the laws. Although he had mastered quite a lot of the laws of formations with his strength, he could only set up a level 1 formation of a master god. His combat strength could at most fight against a master god who had mastered 2 laws. Overall, his Tao of formations was still inferior to his own strength. After all, even a great wizard could only fight against a peaked divine dragon. Back in the Dragon Palace, the Dragon Palace within a radius of thousands of kilometers was much more lively than before. Now, the members of the Dragon Palace had reached about 150,000. In 3 years, the Dragon Palace had increased by 100,000, and the number of members of the Dragon Palace was still increasing. After all the water tribes in the endless star field wanted to join the Dragon Palace. The number of water tribes was more than 1 trillion. Each member of the Dragon Palace was 1 in 100 million, or even 1 in a billion. The strength of the Dragon Palace had improved a lot in the past few years. With the resources that the Dragon Palace controlled, more than 10 godly state experts could be born every day. The number of members who had lit the godly fire had exceeded 5,000. Chapter 2233. 2233 2233 Divine Emperor Battlefield. There were 5,000 members of the Dragon Palace who had ignited the divine fire. There were also 10,000 peak stage demigod experts. All in all, it was equivalent to 15,000 divine realm experts. This number was absolutely invincible in the entire endless star field. Even if all the other gods were added together, there were not so many. However, this power was very weak in the eyes of the divine emperor Tianqin. In his words, the divine realm was a stage that belonged to the heaven's chosen divine sons. Those who were less than 500 years old in the resplendent land were collectively known as youths. Those who were less than 2,000 years old were collectively known as youths. There, many youths had already stepped into the divine realm. As for those heaven's chosen divine sons, they had already ignited 7 or 8 wisps, or even 9 wisps of divine fire when they were young. There were even some who had reached the peak of the godly state when they were young. And in the boundless galaxy, it was undoubtedly a pipe dream to reach 7 or 8 wisps of godly fire in 2,000 years. Xiao Ran had reached such strength at such a young age because he relied on Wuxia. He had consumed the eternal embryo fruit and the eternal embryo fruit. These 2 fruits belonged to the pinnacle of the universe. Chen Feiyang was able to reach the godly master realm at such a young age because he was too lucky to obtain the inheritance of 2 godly masters consecutively. For a young man to have the strength of a god level, one could imagine how terrifying that place was. A powerful force, an army of tens of millions of warriors, all of them were at the god level. The eternal God Lord might only be a commander, only an undying God King could be a general. A land of cultivation. And according to Tianqin God Emperor, and the inheritance of the Dragon God, the true glorious land, the center of the universe with the richest resources. There, it was as glorious as the primeval era. The universe nurtured the most precious treasures of heaven and earth, and all races competed for it. Giants could chase the sun, draw a bow and shoot the sun, and uproot mountains and rivers. Even the celestial emperor of heaven's formation did not set foot in such a glorious place. Dragon King. Just as Wang Xian was deep in thought, Prime Minister Gui walked in and greeted him respectfully. "HMM, the Dragon Palace will have to trouble you for the next period of time." Wang Xian said to him. "Don't worry, Dragon King." Prime Minister Gui nodded his head heavily. "I will make a trip out tomorrow. I don't know when I will be back for the time being." As Wang Xian spoke, he looked at the girls around him. "We have been playing for 3 years. On the day you leave, we will also be in closed-door cultivation." The girls said to him. "Let's go. Let's have a good rest tonight." Wang Xian said to them with a smile. The group of girls rolled their eyes at him. The next morning, Wang Xian came directly to the side of the energy tide through the teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace. Behind him, the group of girls, Hua Kaier, Master Chen Feiyang, and the rest followed him. "Dragon King, this is the treasure-seeking ant that you left behind with us." An expert from the eternal divine leaf walked over and handed the treasure-seeking ant to him. "HMM, I almost forgot about this little guy." Wang Xian smiled and reached out to take it. "Let's go back. When my cultivation base reaches the level of the eternal divine master, I will be able to return to the Dragon Palace directly." He turned around to look at the people behind him and said with a smile, "Little Xian, be careful." The group of girls said to him with concern, "Don't worry." Wang Xian nodded his head heavily. "Xiao Xian, you must bring Qing Yu and Lingxiu back." "Leave it to me." Wang Xian nodded his head at them. Then he waved his hand and looked at the energy-tide black hole in front of him. "Heaven formation, are you sure that the incipient saint wings can ignore the violent energy inside?" He walked to the entrance of the energy-tide black hole and transmitted his voice to the divine emperor of sky formation behind him. "Don't worry. I obtained this incipient saint wings by accident. It's very mysterious. Even when I was at my peak, I couldn't destroy it at all. However, I haven't been able to find out what abilities it has. Its level is definitely higher than the Divine Emperor of Void. The Sky Array God Emperor replied. But Wang Xian nodded his head. His body shook and the incipient saint wings appeared on his back. He moved his body and stepped into the black hole of the energy tide. The enormous energy tide contained a terrifying power. A god master who had comprehended a law had to unleash his full strength in order to withstand this terrifying energy. However, the incipient saint wings completely ignored this energy and flew forward at a terrifying speed. This black hole was a little strange. It didn't appear in front of him the moment he stepped into it. Clearly the distance between the black hole was a little long. Wang Xian flew in the pitch-black black hole for a few hours without seeing the end. The further he went in, the more violent the energy became. The distance between this black hole is so long. How did this black hole form? Wang Xian asked the god of heaven's formation with some doubts. The heaven-nibbling black hole is an extremely terrifying formation. I died in this formation. The deep voice entered Wang Xian's ears, causing him to be slightly stunned. The heaven-nibbling formation. The moment the formation is activated, tens of thousands of black holes will appear instantly. With the power of the black holes, everything in the formation will be torn apart. The god of heaven's formation's voice continued to enter his ears. Your enemy is very strong in that bright land. Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and asked. One of the top few. The god of formation said plainly, but my young friend, don't worry. I have already fallen. No one will think that I'm still alive. Okay. Wang Xian nodded. Looking at the black hole in the void in front of him, he continued to accelerate. Are we there yet? After flying for more than 30 times and disappearing, a ray of light appeared in front of him. Be careful. That battle back then affected tens of billions of kilometers. The entire space has turned into an energy turbulence. This turbulence might cause the immortal king to fall. Listen to my command. At this moment, the voice of the god of heaven's formation suddenly entered Wang Xian's mind. He nodded his head with a solemn expression. Light appeared, but this kind of light was very strange. Red, green, blue and green lights were reflected in his eyes. In the surroundings, energy was wreaking havoc. A large number of stars and meteorites were wreaking havoc in the space. Wang Xian took a glance at his surroundings. His eyes were filled with shock. Fly to the right. The god of heaven's formation immediately commanded. Wang Xian did not hesitate at all. He flew straight to the right. In the surroundings, Wang Xian could see many weapons floating in the air. There were also skeletons that were emitting light. The energy contained in these skeletons made Wang Xian's heart palpitate. Occasionally he could see weapons floating in the air. Some were good and some were bad. All of them were divine weapons. Did you kill all these corpses? Wang Xian took a glance at them. He could see many of these corpses that contained powerful energy. It was hard to imagine how many of them there were in the entire area. If these corpses were collected, they could easily be forged into powerful divine weapons. Haha, although they have ambushed the celestial emperor of Tianqing, they will have to pay a heavy price if they want to kill me. Proud voice from Tianqing God Emperor's mouth. Chapter 2234. 2234-2234 in the Divine Emperor Battlefield. Haha, that battle lasted for a whole year. The number of immortal godly monarchs who died in my hands reached more than 100,000. The number of godly master-level powerhouses was in the millions, and there were countless godly stage powerhouses. If they knew that I'm not dead yet and that they encountered an existence like you, they would definitely die of anger. Ah. An extremely carefree voice came from the god of formation's mouth. However, when Wang Xian heard his words, he was shocked. There are more than 100,000 immortal kings and a few million eternal god lords. Wang Xian asked in surprise. That's right, my friend. There's no name in the starry sky ahead because it's connected by several galaxies. If the boundless galaxy is placed here, it can only be said to be 1/100th of the size of a complete galaxy. And here there are 7 galaxies. The Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said indifferently. So big? Doesn't that mean that even the eternal God would need 1 to 2 months to cross a galaxy? Wang Xian said in surprise. It would take 1 to 2 months to achieve teleportation in diameter. The eternal God wouldn't dare to teleport recklessly in this region. There are many dangerous and unknown places. There are some places that the Divine Emperor wouldn't dare to enter. There are also some places that even the immortal king would be afraid to enter. Let me put it this way. There is a huge planet in the galaxy that is as big as the entire boundless galaxy. The God Emperor of Tiancheng said. A planet that is as big as the boundless galaxy? Wang Xian was extremely shocked. Wouldn't that mean that a city on this planet would take a god-level powerhouse 10 days to half a month to fly out of the city? This was simply terrifying. Humans are not the masters of the universe. At this moment, the God of Heaven's formation suddenly said another sentence. Humans are not the masters of the universe. Wang Xian agreed with this sentence. In comparison, in the entire universe, humans could only be considered as a race with a relatively large number. Among the myriad of races in the universe, humans could only be ranked in the top 20. If it wasn't for the fact that humans were good at learning and using weapons, humans wouldn't even be ranked in the top 20. It's the same in this bright land. The space beasts, demons, universe desolate beasts, and robots can all compete with humans. The Divine Emperor of Heaven Array continued his introduction. Robots. Wang Xian's eyes revealed a look of astonishment. That's right, they are robots. Robots created by humans. After they possess intelligence, they will form a brand new race of life. In this bright land there is a race of robots. They are the masters and can fight against the God Emperor powerhouses. They are extremely powerful. Their learning ability is also very terrifying. All kinds of high-tech weapons can easily destroy planets. The God Emperor of Heaven's formation said slowly. Wang Xian was slightly moved when he heard his words. There is an energy storm ahead. Fly to the left immediately. Quick. The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation's reminder rang out. Wang Xian's body moved and he flew to the left immediately. Bus, bus, bus. After avoiding the terrifying energy storm, Wang Xian swept his gaze across and discovered that a star that was the size of the moon was instantly annihilated. All that was left was a speck of dust. Wang Xian's pupils constricted slightly. Under such circumstances, it was as though he had been staying in the beginner's village all this while. When he suddenly came to the main city, he was surrounded by peerless experts. This was too difficult. Tianqin, where are we going now? Wang Xian immediately asked him. It's only 100 years since my death. Let's go to a nearby planet. I'll find you a backer there. Although the other party only has the strength of an immortal king, it should be enough. Tianqin immediately replied. After we get out, I will use the formation to look for Qingyu and Lingxiu. Wang Xian frowned slightly. Suddenly he saw a meteorite crashing towards him. His body moved and he quickly dodged to the side. Ping. The energy released by the meteorite was abnormally terrifying, causing Wang Xian's expression to change slightly. Ping. He stretched out his arm and turned it into a dragon claw that tore upwards. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying force caused him to retreat hundreds of thousands of meters. The clothes on his body were torn apart. Wang Xian moved his body and used energy to condense a set of clothes. He exhaled slightly. Be careful. This piece of energy is completely chaotic due to that huge battle. It will take at least 10 days for it to fly out of here. The God of Formation reminded him. Okay. Wang Xian nodded his head and braced himself. 13 days later, at the edge of the famous battlefield of the Emperor's destruction in the Tianhai Galaxy, an extremely pathetic figure flew out. His clothes were tattered and there were a few scars on his arms. Even his face had 2 scars. His clothes were burned by the true Samadhi fire, and the scars on his face were caused by the 4 layers of sword laws. If it wasn't for the Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation commanding him, he might not have been able to fly out for more than 10 days. Phew, this place is really dangerous. Wang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. There are still many formations that I set up in this place that have yet to be activated. The Divine Emperor wouldn't dare to venture out recklessly. If you didn't know that your girlfriend is still alive, I would have thought that 99% of you had already perished. The God of Heaven's formation said. I want to search for the location of Qingyu and the rest. Wang Xian did not hesitate at all. He immediately took out Qingyu and Lingxiu's hair and began to set up an array. Array formation, blood connection. Wang Xian immediately set up an array formation. However, what made his expression ugly was that the blood connection could not sense their location. If the blood connection cannot be sensed, there are only 2 possibilities. The distance is too far and your strength is too weak. It's better for you to improve your strength first. If you can reach the realm of the Void God Emperor, it won't be difficult to find two people. The Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said to Wang Xian. Wang Xian nodded his head with a bad expression. It had been more than 4 years and the entire resplendent land was so big. If he wanted to find it as soon as possible, he had to improve his strength as soon as possible. Do you think the backer you found for me is reliable? Wang Xian asked. Don't worry. I was just pointing at a little fellow in the past. Although his talent is a little lacking, there's no need to mention his character. I won't reveal any information about my existence for the time being. You just have to give him this piece of paper. A piece of paper floated in front of Wang Xian. Wang Xian reached out and took it. There were no words on the paper. Instead, there was a voice message that could be heard when he opened it. Let's go. I'll guide you. The God of Formation said. Wang Xian's body moved and he immediately flew forward. This was a vast void. He flew forward and soon he saw many huge stars. Some stars were burning with huge flames. It was extremely terrifying. Some stars had a terrifying suction force that made people tremble. This is the bright land. Chapter 2235. 2235-2235 Xian Tianzi's thoughts. The Tianhai Galaxy was one of the 7 galaxies in the resplendent land. The natural selection continent was an incomparably vast continent. This was not a planet, but a continent that was perfectly round. Wang Xian looked at the continent in front of him and felt extremely tiny. This kind of continent was similar to the continent plates in the boundless galaxy that had a circumference of tens of millions of kilometers. It was not enough for those continental plates. Compared to the one in front of him, it looked extremely tiny. Wang Xian could see the thickness of the continental plates. He did not know how many kilometers thick they were. Even with his current strength, he could not see the bottom at a glance. The entire continent was filled with the aura of desolation. However, the continent in front of him was filled with a sense of technology. Cars and airplanes shuttled between the ground and the air. It was filled with sci-fi. However, in this sci-fi, trees that were 10,000 meters tall rose up from the ground. Their branches and leaves were lush. There were some huge birds and beasts flying in the sky. It looked like it was filled with fantasy. This is the natural selection continent. It is a continent with no night. It has always been under the illumination of the sun. In the past, the development of technology was the main focus of the natural selection continent. After the development of technology reached a bottleneck, it entered an era of cultivation. Emperor Qiancheng's voice entered Wang Xian's mind. He was obviously very familiar with the planet in front of him. This continent is really strange. How high is the level of technology here? Wang Xian looked around with curiosity. It can eliminate existences at the level of the Eternal God Lord, but it is impossible to surpass the level of the Eternal God Lord. There are more than a dozen immortal godly monarchs on this continent. This place is completely different from the boundless galaxy. Be it technology, arrays, or cultivation, they have already formed a system. There are a few powerful organizations. From now on, it will be much more convenient for you to join these organizations. The Divine Emperor of Heaven Array introduced to him. Continue flying forward. Following that, he continued to give orders. Wang Xian nodded his head and flew straight towards the Tianzi continent. As soon as he reached the main road, Wang Xian sensed a feeling of being monitored. It's the Heaven's Eye, the most advanced technology in the Tianzi continent. By scanning with the Heaven's Eye, it can detect if you are a wanted criminal. The God of Heaven's formation transmitted his voice. Heaven's Eye? Wang Xian was slightly taken aback. He looked a little surprised. In the major planets of the 7 galaxies, most of the technology and formations are connected. Once some of the most vicious criminals are wanted, they can be found on other planets. Of course, there are also some planets that do not prohibit these people from entering. These planets often involve darkness. The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation introduced. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. He had a vague idea of this bright land. In the bright land, humans were not the dominant force. Therefore, humans were more united. The major planets were connected together like an internet. Any criminals who entered could be seen directly. This was very beneficial to a planet, a continent, and a faction. Normally, no one would reject it. Furthermore, humans are not the dominant force in this bright land. As humans are facing a threat, the major planets can teleport. Therefore, the security of the various places is better. Although this starry sky is still under the control of the major forces, there will basically be no indiscriminate killing of innocent people, even the disciples of the major forces. Wang Xian swept his gaze across the sky and continued to fly. The divine emperor of heaven's formation continued to explain to him. Why? Upon hearing his words, Wang Xian was slightly stunned. Because once the ruler of a force does things unfairly and oppresses others, it will result in the loss of population. In a place like this where one can teleport to a planet, when ordinary people see such a situation, they will choose to go somewhere else. The loss of population means the loss of the strong. It will be extremely difficult to fight against other powerful existences. As time goes on, they will either perish or dissipate. The celestial emperor of heaven's formation explained the rules of this resplendent place to Wang Xian. The strong could not kill the innocent, on the premise that the weak could not provoke them. The various major factions would not bully others based on their power. They would even do so in order to ensure the morale of the people in their respective regions. It would be fair and just. This was a pretty good environment for competition. Because humans are not the rulers of this region, the major factions do not dare to do as they please. This environment is pretty good. Wang Xian thought to himself. There was no control in the sky. The people flying around were very fast. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and realized that he could see the god-level powerhouses. Among the 1,000 people, there was probably one powerhouse who had ignited the divine fire. However, there were not many god-level powerhouses. Wang Xian had only seen one after flying for more than 2 hours. God-level powerhouses were very ordinary. A god-level powerhouse could be called a powerhouse. An immortal god king could oversee a region and suppress a planet. The planet here was much bigger than the boundless galaxy. One planet was equivalent to 500 to 600 life planets in the boundless galaxy. The difference was huge. We are here, Xian Heaven Domain. After flying for more than 10 hours, the celestial emperor of heaven's formation's notification sounded. Wang Xian looked ahead. In the middle of a huge canyon there was an entrance. The entrance was more than 100 kilometers wide, and there were people and cars coming in and out. In the sky above the canyon, there was a huge arched door with the words Xian Tian Territory written on it. Go to the Xian Tian Academy in the Xian Tian Territory. The celestial emperor of formation instructed him directly. Wang Xian nodded and entered immediately. The entire Xian Heaven domain looked extremely vast. Waves of majestic energy came from within. In the surroundings, Wang Xian saw numerous gigantic divine trees. These divine trees possessed intelligence. Some of them even had the appearance of a human. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and was slightly shocked. Vast. Compared to the boundless star field, there was a huge difference. Even the Dragon Palace was far from it. After flying for another 7 to 8 hours, Wang Xian saw an incomparably huge academy. Ancient buildings, vast ancient pagodas and majestic energy. As well as those laws that made one's heart tremble. Non-Xian Tian Academy disciples are prohibited from entering. When Wang Xian stepped into the entrance of Xian Tian Academy, a middle-aged man at the guard's office stared at him and said indifferently, "I'm here to look for Senior Xian Tianzi." Wang Xian looked at the middle-aged man and said directly, "Xian Tian." The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. Then, his expression turned cold as he sized up the man from head to toe. "It's not easy to meet our dean. It's also not easy to meet anyone. Let's go," he said directly. Meet their dean? Who was their dean? An undying god king level existence, the strongest in the entire dark sky domain, one of the pinnacle experts of the Tianzhe continent. How could anyone meet him? Those who were qualified to meet their dean wouldn't do it this way. Chapter 2236. 2236 Xian Tianzi was deep in thought. He was looking at the attire of the young man in front of him. There were 2 sword marks on his face and burn marks on his arms. Although his clothes were neat and tidy, he still looked a little embarrassed. This? Wang Xian was slightly stunned when he saw that he couldn't even enter the door. Heaven formation, what should we do now? We can't even enter the door. Wang Xian was a little speechless as he transmitted his voice to the god of sky array. Fortunately, the middle-aged man who was guarding the door had a better quality. He didn't look down on others and directly ordered him to scram. Of course, this action of the middle-aged man might also save Wang Xian from having to show off and slap his face. Throw away the spiritual paper. That kid will be here soon. The god of sky array said indifferently. As the god of void who had lived for tens of millions, he could still consider such a small matter. Wang Xian nodded his head. He took out the spiritual paper and threw it lightly in front of him. The spiritual paper flew directly into the mysterious Sky Academy. Oh, what are you doing? The middle-aged man's expression changed. He watched as the spiritual paper waved its arm and a wave of spiritual energy surged towards the spiritual paper. However, the spiritual paper trembled slightly and disappeared. Damn it. The middle-aged man's pupils contracted slightly. With a wave of his arm, a formation compass appeared in front of him instantly. The formation compass revolved and with a wave of the middle-aged man's arm, a ring of fire trapped Wang Xian instantly. Ha! Wang Xian was slightly stunned as he looked at the ring of fire around him. Come in. The old man waved his arm and pulled him into a room at the side. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment and didn't resist at all. Old Tang, what happened? What did you put the spiritual paper for? Tell me honestly. After entering the room, the middle-aged man stared at him coldly. A few guards at the side immediately looked at him in puzzlement. I'll inform Senior Tian Xuanzi. He will be here soon. Wang Xian said faintly. Inform our principal to come over? Kid, I think you have a screw loose. A middle-aged man raised his head slightly and sized up Wang Xian from head to toe. It'll only take a few minutes. I can't escape anyway. Wang Xian shrugged his shoulders and stood there without moving. His gaze swept across the few of them. Among the few godly state experts, one of them was an elder who had reached the realm of the eternal God Lord. One of them was guarding the entrance of the academy and was at the level of the eternal God Lord. This was rather unbelievable. Oh. When the people around saw Wang Xian's calm expression, they were slightly stunned. Lock him up here first. The old man who was at the level of the God Lord said faintly. There was some doubt in his eyes. Dean, this time around, more than 20 of our teachers and students have been completely annihilated. Those sea monsters in the underground sea are too cunning. Now that the new semester is starting, we will have to reassign some teachers. At this moment, at the top of a tall tower in Shintian Academy, a few old men stood in front of a white-bearded old man and reported with a grim expression on their faces. The white-bearded old man frowned slightly. Wang? At this moment, a piece of spiritual paper suddenly appeared in front of him. The white-bearded old man was slightly stunned and full of astonishment. With a wave of his arm, the spiritual paper landed in his hand. Boom! In the next moment, the white-bearded old man suddenly stood up. His face was filled with excitement and shock. All of you retreat first. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure instantly disappeared. Oh! The few old men in the room were slightly stunned. They looked at each other and walked out with puzzlement. Buzz. At the same time, a figure appeared at the entrance guard of the Shintian Academy. When Wang Xian saw the old man who suddenly appeared, his pupils constricted slightly. Very soon he guessed the identity of the old man. Greetings to the dean. At the entrance guard, the few of them saw the appearance of the old man and their faces were filled with shock. They immediately bowed respectfully. They glanced at Wang Xian who was beside them. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Senior Tian Xuanzi. Wang Xian looked at the old man and cupped his hands. Let's go, little brother. Let's go to my place. The white-bearded old man was Tian Xuanzi. With a wave of his arm he enveloped Wang Xian. The two of them disappeared instantly. All that was left was the shocked expressions of the guards in the security room. That kid really knew their principal. In just a split second, Wang Xian sensed the drastic changes in the surroundings. He was already standing at the top of a mountain peak, surrounded by clouds. There were also mountain peaks around him. All of the mountain peaks contained majestic energy as if they were forming a huge formation. The spiritual energy here was extremely dense and was even higher than the Dragon Palace. Phew, little brother, I didn't expect you to be an old friend of Senior Celestial the Arch of Heaven's formation. Since Senior Celestial the Arch of Heaven's formation asked me to take care of you, you can live peacefully in my Xian Heaven domain in the future. Xian Tianzi's eyes flickered as he stared at Wang Xian. He took a deep breath. Thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi. Wang Xian was slightly silent. He nodded his head and thanked him. Don't worry. Although I don't know why Senior Tianxian handed you over to me, I owe you a debt of gratitude. This debt of gratitude is greater than the heavens. It's a pity that Senior Tianqian. Xian Tianzi shook his head slightly and looked towards the east. Forget it. It's better if you don't know some things. I will teach you well in the future and arrange a place for you to stay. Alright, what kind of formations are you cultivating? Xian Tianzi hesitated for a moment and asked Wang Xian. Yes, it's related. Wang Xian nodded his head. What's your cultivation level now? Xian Tianzi looked at him and asked. I've just been able to establish laws at the level of a god lord. Wang Xian replied. Oh, you've already been able to establish laws? A hint of shock flashed across Xian Tianzi's eyes. He sized up Wang Xian from head to toe and sensed his aura. Judging from his vitality, he's very young and belongs to the stage of youth. The way of formations in the youth stage has already reached the level of a god lord. It's unbelievable. Senior said that this is the son of his deceased friend. To be able to be related to Senior, his talent is absolutely terrifying. Also, before Senior died, he might have left behind his inheritance. Could it be? All of a sudden, a powerful luster shot out from his eyes, and his body trembled. Even if he didn't obtain the inheritance and only obtained a tiny bit of it, it would still be a treasure that would drive all array formation masters crazy if placed outside. This youth definitely has boundless potential in the future. Xian Tianzi's thoughts were active. Little brother, are you willing to take me as your master? After hesitating for a moment, Xian Tianzi's eyes flickered as he looked at Wang Xian. I don't want to take anyone as my master. Wang Xian shook his head. He didn't even agree when the celestial emperor of Tianqing wanted to take him as his disciple, let alone Xian Tianzi. Although Xian Tianzi's strength was extremely terrifying, he couldn't teach him anything. Xian Tianzi didn't seem to be too surprised by Wang Xian's response. Since that's the case, let's forget about it. Then, according to the instructions of the Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation, little brother, you will marry into our Shen Tian territory in the future. Don't worry, I will find you a girl that you are satisfied with. There are many goddesses in our Shen Tian territory. There will definitely be someone that you are satisfied with. I will watch you grow up, get married and have children. I will not disappoint Senior Tianqing God Emperor. He suddenly said slowly, his voice full of emotion. His words stunned Wang Xian. Chapter 2237. 2237 2237 Xian Tianzi's thoughts. Marry into the family? When Wang Xian heard Xian Tianzi's words, he was stunned when he saw the old man staring at him with a glowing face. He was stunned. Tianqing, you old man, you told him to let me marry into their Shen heaven domain? You told him to watch me get married and have children? Wang Xian's face turned dark as he transmitted his voice to Xian Tianzi. No, I told him to take care of you after you became an old friend of mine. The god of Tianqin was also a little stunned. Soon after, he became speechless. Maybe this kid sees that you have good talent and is related to me. That's why he wants to keep you in their mysterious sky territory. Yeah, I used to see this kid's honest face. I didn't expect him to be so cunning. Looks like he's getting smarter and smarter. However, my young friend, you have benefited from me this time. No matter what, this old fellow is still a godly king. Among his descendants, there will always be beautiful women. When that time comes, won't you be able to pick any beautiful women you want? The celestial emperor of heaven's formation said with a smile on his face. Fuck. Wang Xian was speechless. He turned around and looked at Xian Tianzi. Don't be in a hurry to reject him. You are now working for this old fellow. In the future you will have to let him take care of you. I haven't seen this old fellow for more than 10,000 years. It's not a big deal to betray yourself. The Tianqing God Emperor seemed to be very happy when he saw Wang Xian being defeated. He transmitted his voice to him. This, Senior Xian Tianzi, I am still young. Let's not talk about other things. Wang Xian replied to Xian Tianzi with a dark face. Haha, there's no hurry. Let's go. I will bring you to a place to stay. Xian Tianzi said as he waved his arm. The two of them instantly appeared on another mountain peak. This mountain peak was not too far away from the previous one. On top of the mountain peak there was a string peak. The entire mountain peak contained a huge amount of spiritual energy. It was one of the better mountain peaks in the vicinity. Little brother, you can stay here. This is the mountain peak that belonged to a kid of mine back then. However, due to an accident. Oh, I forgot to ask little brother your name. The old man looked around with a nostalgic look. Then he smiled and looked at Wang Xian. Wang Xian Ren Shan Xian. Wang Xian said to him, "Your name is not bad. I'll call you Little Xian from now on. This will be your home from now on. If you need anything, just look for me. I'll get someone to take care of your daily life later. Also, it's very difficult to cultivate in the path of formations. If you need anything, you can look for me. I don't know what you lack either. I'll give you some resources." As Xian Tianzi spoke, he waved his arm. Numerous divine pills with law flowing on them floated around Wang Xian. There were dozens of eternal divine pills. Their level was around level 2 and level 3 of the eternal divine lord. They were also the most suitable for Wang Xian's current strength. "Thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi." Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A trace of gratitude appeared on his face as he said solemnly, It's just some small elixirs. If you need them in the future, come and look for me directly." Xian Tianzi waved his hand and looked around. He continued, "Look around first. I'll get someone to call you later. We'll be nagging." "All right, thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi." Wang Xian nodded his head in gratitude. "Haha, no need to thank me. We'll be a family from now on," Xian Tianzi said cheerfully. He waved his hand and left immediately. Wang Xian's face turned black when he heard his words. "FUCK a family? What is this old man trying to do to me?" However, this Xian Tianzi is indeed not bad. Wang Xian muttered as he looked at the eternal lord-level elixirs in front of him. If the people from the Xian Heaven region knew that a powerful man could treat him in such a manner, they would be extremely envious. They would even feel that it was unbelievable. These dozens of elixirs should be able to ignite 1 or even 2 wisps of divine fire again. Wang Xian's heart was burning. Although that old fellow has some ulterior motives, it's still not bad. Back then, he knelt in front of my hall for 5 years and I didn't take him in as my disciple. Sigh. The voice of the God of Heaven's formation rang in Wang Xian's ears. Finally, he let out a sigh as he thought of his disciple who betrayed him back then. Wang Xian ignored the self-pity of the God of Heaven's formation. He floated at the top of the mountain peak and strolled around the entire mountain peak. This string peak was indeed extremely luxurious. There was also an eternal divine grass in the room on the mountain peak that was emitting divine light. But, after scanning his surroundings, Wang Xian immediately stared at the elixir in front of him. With a wave of his arm, he swallowed it directly. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, waves of majestic energy transformed into the dragon qi in his body. Wang Xian had only ignited 6 wisps of divine fire. After consuming the elixir of the eternal divine lord level, the dragon qi that was converted from the 6 wisps of divine fire was extremely terrifying. The majestic energy of his energy surged as the aura on his body continued to rise. As he did not transform into the body of a divine dragon, the phantom image of a 7-colored divine dragon appeared around him. Ding! Congratulations to host for increasing your level. You have lit up 7 wisps of divine fire. Ding! Congratulations to host for increasing your level. You have lit up 8 wisps of divine fire. Name Wang Xian. Race, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Divine Dragon, Mandragon Unity. Level, 8 wisps of divine fire, 5th change of the divine dragon transformation. Divine Crystal, 17,735. 4 billion/1,000 billion. Supernatural ability, ruling the water tribe below one's level. Devouring creatures to extract divine crystals. Control of the 5 elements. Cultivation method, divine dragon transformation. Supernatural ability, soul absorbing, spirit attaching, Yin-Yang 5 elements dragon eyes. Aspect, 5 elements great mill, dragon kingdom in the palm, dragon head under the heavens, dragon body of 10,000 miles, Yin-Yang poles, Yin-Yang 5 elements arms bowl, divine dragon tail swing. Divine kingdom, dragon palace. Dragon palace, level 6. Dragon palace members, 153633. Few 2 levels in a row. Wang Xian opened his eyes and revealed an excited expression. Indeed, it was different to have someone protecting him. With 8 wisps of divine fire, he was able to fight against or even kill the eternal God Lord who had comprehended 4 laws. This speed of improvement, is this the inheritance of the divine dragon? Is a peak existence that terrifying? The God of Heaven's formation muttered as he sensed Wang Xian's improvement. His strength was already very strong. According to what he knew, there were only 2 realms above him. However, he was still a little shocked when faced with Wang Xian's rapid improvement. But Wang Xian waved his arm and set up a blood-linked formation. After failing to sense Qingyu and Lingxiu, he shook his head helplessly. With your improvement in strength this time, you should be able to master more formations. You can learn them in the next few days. The God of Heaven's formation transmitted his voice to Wang Xian. All right. He nodded his head. Young Master Wang, our master is calling you over for a meal. At this moment an old woman's voice came from outside. Wang Xian walked out and nodded his head. Young Master Wang, I will take care of your daily life in the future. If you have anything to tell me, you can tell me. The old lady said with a smile. All right, it will be troublesome in the future. Wang Xian nodded his head and walked towards the main peak under the guidance of the old lady. Chapter 2238. 2238 in the 2238 Greater World. My young friend Wang Xian, give this spiritual paper to that old fellow later. Don't say too much. Just tell him that it was given to him after he took you in. Following behind the old lady, the God of Heaven's formation transmitted his voice to Wang Xian. A spiritual paper appeared in front of him. All right. Wang Xian nodded and didn't ask anything. Come little Xian, have a seat. Upon entering the main peak where Shen Tianzi was, Wang Xian greeted him warmly when he saw him entering. Okay. Wang Xian nodded his head. Thank you for taking care of me, senior. Haha, I've already said that there's no need to be so polite. Shen Tianzi shook his head and gestured at Wang Xian. Wang Xian looked at the food on the table. All of them were valuable items and the ingredients were at the godly state level. He smacked his lips and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Try it. I don't usually eat like this. Give me a glass of wine. This is a 100,000-year-old wine. Shen Tianzi greeted him warmly. Wang Xian nodded and greeted him politely. Shen Tianzi didn't have any special purpose. He was just introducing some information about the mysterious sky territory to him. The mysterious sky territory was one of the 4 major forces in the Tianzi continent. It occupied 1/5 of the Tianzi continent. As for how big it was, Wang Xian did a rough calculation. It was equivalent to the area of 1,000 previous Earths. That's right, it was 1,000. That was how terrifying it was. A city in the mysterious sky territory was equivalent to the size of a few Earths. After 3 rounds of drinking, most of the time Shen Tianzi was the one talking. He was telling him how awesome the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation was back then. How did he obtain the guidance of the Tiancheng Celestial Emperor? However, it was obvious that Shen Tianzi had concealed the fact that he had been rejected after kneeling for 5 years. Wang Xian realized that Shen Tianzi was also a man of character. No wonder the Tiancheng Celestial Emperor said that he had a good temperament. Senior, I won't disturb you anymore. This is a piece of spiritual paper. The Tiancheng Celestial Emperor asked me to give it to you after you took me in. Before Wang Xian left, he took out the spiritual paper and placed it in front of Shen Tianzi. Ha! Shen Tianzi was slightly stunned. He pointed his finger at the spiritual paper and his body began to tremble very quickly. Huff huff huff. Some of the core formations of the Celestial Emperor of Tiancheng. He growled in a low voice. His face was flushed red and his face was filled with excitement. Senior Celestial Emperor of Tiancheng only taught these core formations to his personal disciples. Although you have already fallen, if one day I, Shen Tianzi, can step into the Celestial Emperor realm, I will definitely avenge you. It's just that I might not be as talented as you. Shen Tianzi mumbled and clenched his fists tightly. In the next few days I will first master the Tao of formations. Then I will think of a way to earn resources and increase my strength. Wang Xian returned to the Flux Disciple Peak and thought to himself. Sky formation, hand over the formations that I can master now. As Wang Xian spoke, he said to the God of Sky Formation. Didn't you hear that old fellow say that I'm so awesome just now? I didn't take him in even after kneeling for 10 years. Look at you now. I almost became your nanny. The God of Sky Formation said with a rare indignant tone. All right. Recognize yourself. You're already dead. Wang Xian smiled. When my strength reaches the level of Celestial the Arch, I will give you a body. Huff. The Celestial the Arch of Heaven's formation took a deep breath and began to teach Wang Xian obediently. Now he was counting on Wang Xian. In the next 10 days Wang Xian did not leave the Flux Disciple Peak. He had been cultivating all kinds of formations. In the next 10 days Wang Xian had mastered more than 20 formations. Some of them were auxiliary formations while the rest were offensive formations. What a monster! Seeing that Wang Xian had mastered a formation that was comparable to a level 3 Divine Lord, the God of Heaven's formation muttered to himself. Back then, which formation didn't take him hundreds of years to master. It wasn't as easy as him. However, the God of Heaven's formation knew that this was mainly due to Wang Xian's mastery of 7 attributes and his own strength. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to master them so quickly. 7 attributes and the origin of attributes. This was no joke. It's not bad. Although it's a little useless, it's good that we don't waste too much time. Wang Xian stretched his body and said indifferently, Shen Tianzi will beat you to death when he hears your words. The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation said indifferently. Next, we have to consider the matter of obtaining resources. Do you know how to obtain resources quickly? Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling as he asked the God of Heaven's formation. Oh, I have been the God of Void for more than 50 million years. I don't know about these things. The God of Heaven's formation shook his head. Wang Xian was speechless. However, it made sense when he thought about it. How would an existence at the level of the God of Void know how to obtain resources faster? Go and ask that old fellow. He is the Dean of the Shantian Academy, so he should know more about it. The God Emperor of Heaven's formation suggested to him. All right. Wang Xian nodded. He immediately took out his communication device and sent a message to Shen Tianzi. Soon Shen Tianzi replied. Wang Xian stopped him from coming over to pick him up and flew directly in the direction of the Shantian Academy. There was a formation protecting the mountain peak. However, Wang Xian had Shen Tianzi's keepsake on him, so he was not affected by the formation. While flying in the air, Wang Xian could feel the vast aura around him. This aura was similar to the prehistoric world in the Legends of Earth, as well as the world in sci-fi movies. Cars, spaceships, and airplanes shuttled through the prehistoric world. Wang Xian actually saw entertainment venues such as bars, strange mountains and rivers, wild sci-fi. There seemed to be a lot more people. When Wang Xian arrived at the towering and eye-catching Shantian Academy, he saw that there were a lot more people at the entrance of the academy compared to the last time. Most of them were young men and women with prominent figures. School has started. Wang Xian was puzzled and walked into the academy. Beep beep, non-students are not allowed to enter. This time, a voice rang out as soon as Wang Xian entered. At the guard's office, someone immediately stared at him. Some of the students also looked over curiously. It's that young man. A middle-aged guard's expression changed slightly when he saw Wang Xian. He quickly went forward to welcome him. Young master, what are you doing? This person in front of them was personally welcomed by the dean, who was so elusive that they couldn't even see his face. Go and look for Senior Shen Tianzi. Wang Xian said with a smile. Come. The Shantian Academy is very big. Young master, I will bring you there. The middle-aged man said to him respectfully with a face full of respect. All right, sorry for the trouble. No trouble. The middle-aged man, who had a cold expression the last time, brought Wang Xian into the academy respectfully this time. The entire academy was indeed huge. They flew at full speed for an hour before they arrived at the tower where the central principal was. The entire academy had also opened Wang Xian's eyes. It was too vast and majestic. Chapter 2239. 2239 in the 2239 universe. This is where the principal works. However, I don't know if the principal is inside. Sometimes, the principal will not come to the academy for hundreds of years. After the middle-aged guard brought Wang Xian over, he said to him, Thank you. Wang Xian nodded his head. He looked at the entrance and walked straight ahead. The simple and unadorned tower occupied an area of 5,000 to 6,000 square meters and was tens of thousands of meters tall. The entire tower was enveloped by a powerful array formation and was emitting a powerful pressure. The vast aura that came at him made Wang Xian's heart skip a beat. When he had just stepped into the bottom of the tower, Shen Tianzi, who was at the top, sensed Wang Xian's arrival. He waved his arm gently. Wang Xian, who had just entered the entrance, instantly sensed that he had appeared in an ancient and luxurious room. Senior Shen Tianzi. Wang Xian shouted at Shen Tianzi. He had a better understanding of the immortal godly king's strength. Take a seat. What's the matter, little Xian? Xian Tianzi asked with a smile. Senior Xian Tianzi, I would like to ask, is there any way to obtain resources quickly? Wang Xian asked directly. Resources? What resources? Weapons? Elixirs? Xian Tianzi was slightly taken aback. If you need anything, I'll give it to you. No need, senior. I can't just ask you for all the resources. Wang Xian shook his head and thanked him. Haha, what does it matter? We're family. Xian Tianzi laughed nonchalantly. Wang Xian shook his head speechlessly. Senior, I might need a lot of resources. I also need to know how to earn resources quickly. To earn all kinds of resources, you need to take risks. You have just reached the Divine Lord realm and you are still too weak. I am worried. How about this? Xiao Xian, you are also at the Divine Lord realm. You have come to Xiantian Academy to teach your students. The treatment given to the teachers in the academy is not bad. If you can teach some outstanding disciples, there will be many rewards. Xian Tianzi said to Wang Xian. This? Wang Xian was a little speechless when he heard what Xian Tianzi said. Be a teacher? This. Senior, I have never been a teacher before. I want to get some resources quickly. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous. Wang Xian said in a speechless manner. No, you are still young. Although your strength and talent are not bad, you can't take risks rashly. Tell me what resources you need. Moreover, the teachers of the Mysterious Sky Academy are also very free. They can only attend 7 or 8 classes a month at most. Some students need to pay credits to listen to your lectures. The teachers can exchange their credits for treasures in the academy. Of course, if you feel that a disciple is not bad, you can specially teach him. The teachers with excellent results will also be rewarded. It doesn't matter if you don't have experience. The strength of a God Lord is enough to teach some students who have ignited the divine fire. Xian Tianzi immediately retorted and started to introduce the tasks of the teachers in the academy to him. Wang Xian was speechless. From the look of him, it was obvious that he didn't want him to take the risk. A hesitant look appeared on his face as he was thinking about how to convince this old fellow. Not long ago, more than a dozen teachers from our academy led the students into the underground sea and all of them perished. Currently there are no teachers in the academy. Xiao Xian, please help me, this old man, to teach some new students. Xian Tianzi, who had lived for millions of years, could tell that Wang Xian was unwilling at first glance. He immediately said that. Oh, the underground sea? Died? Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. The underground sea is the underground world of the Tianzi continent. Although the natural selection continent is a continental plate, its thickness can reach up to hundreds of millions of kilometers. Other than the surface of the sea, there is also the underground sea. The subterranean sea is occupied by sea monsters. These sea monsters are extremely powerful. There are even existences at the immortal king level. In addition, becoming a student of the Xiantian Academy is not just about cultivating in seclusion. Entering the greater world to gain experience is also the most important thing. Xian Tianzi introduced to him. Subterranean sea. Greater world? Wang Xian's face was filled with doubt once again as he mumbled. Senior, what is the greater world? He could not help but ask. The 7 galaxies are vast and endless. There are billions of planets. Although the major forces are divided, humans are not the rulers of this place. Sometimes they will encounter attacks from desolate beasts, demons and monsters. Some planets and some forces cannot withstand the attacks, or they can avoid the loss of a large number of people. They will issue missions and other major forces on other planets will be able to see it. If anyone wants to obtain the rewards of these missions, they can accept the missions and carry out planet teleportation. Other than that, there is also the alternate dimension created by the Godly King, collectively known as the Greater World Mission. Xian Tianzi introduced it to Wang Xian. Can the Xiantian Academy accept the Greater World Mission? A glint flashed across Wang Xian's eyes as he asked immediately. Yes, but Xiao Xian don't have such thoughts. Come and be a teacher in the academy. Xian Tianzi said to him immediately. How many classes do you have in a month as a teacher? Do you have a high degree of freedom? I want to cultivate too. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment before asking. One class lasts for 2 hours. There are at least 6 classes in a month. There are about 30 students with you. They are all students who have ignited the divine fire. You will be teaching the formation from a wisp of divine fire to its peak. There will be 2 formations in each stage. One will be for combat and the other will be for support. If the students wish to learn more formations, you will have to take them in as your disciples and exchange them with your points in the academy. As for the teachers, if you are not prepared to take the students in person, you will have a high degree of freedom. You will basically be able to stay in the academy for 3 to 4 days a month. Xian Tianzi spoke. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head. Since Xian Tianzi had spoken, he couldn't reject him. Furthermore, after agreeing to him, he could use his identity as a teacher of the academy to take a look at the greater world and the sea monster. Haha, all right. It seems like it's only a few days since the freshmen are reporting. I will get someone to bring you there. Xian Tianzi stood up happily and looked down as though he was transmitting his voice. Principal. Soon, a woman dressed in battle armor walked in. The golden battle armor wrapped around her body, making her look like a violent god of war. The woman bowed respectfully to Xian Tianzi. This is Wang Xian. Arrange a place for him to be the teacher of this batch of freshmen. Also, give him a place to stay in the forest. Xian Tianzi spoke expressionlessly with a dignified expression when he faced his subordinates. It's the principal. The woman was shocked. She looked at Wang Xian with a shocked expression. She felt extremely shocked when she sensed Wang Xian's aura at such a young age. For an expert to be able to sense the age of a person from his aura, it might not be too much of a preparation. However, it was enough to determine the youth and the young man. Some experts who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years could sense the aura of time and desolation from their bodies at a glance. Chapter 2240. 2240 Teacher Wang. Teacher Wang Xian, the new students have just registered not long ago. There are no teachers to teach them for the time being. However, the official selection of the students will begin tomorrow morning. I'll bring you to the back forest first. The back forest is a place that the academy has prepared for some of the powerhouses in the academy. In the future, Teacher Wang Xian can temporarily stay there. The woman who followed Director Jean came down from the principal's tower and said to Wang Xian, "Yes, thank you, Director Jean. This is my first day at the Xintian Academy. I don't know much about this place and I don't know much about some of the teaching." Wang Xian thanked Director Jean. It's all right. Since the principal wants you to be an array teacher, you must be strong enough. Since Teacher Wang Xian is so young, he must be a genius. I'll bring you around the academy later. If you need anything, you can come to me directly. Director Jin's attitude towards Wang Xian was very good. After all, Wang Xian was brought here personally by the dean. His relationship with the dean was obviously not simple. As the ruler of the Shen Heaven domain, the dean was one of the top experts in the entire Tianzi continent. Even if she wanted to meet the dean once, it would take her at least a few hundred years. If it wasn't for the recent major incident that happened in the mysterious Sky Academy, the dean wouldn't have come. Dean Jean brought him around the academy. The entire academy was huge, covering an area of at least 10,000 kilometers. There were hundreds of thousands of students in the academy. They were the most outstanding talents in the entire mysterious sky territory. The entire academy even included a rather large mountain range. It was extremely vast. This is the back forest. Teacher Wang Xian, you can stay here. Of course, you can also stay in other places. It's just a little more convenient here. Director Jean brought him to a small forest filled with bamboo. A stream flowed through the bamboo forest. Beside the stream there were many simple and natural houses. Beside each house, there was a bamboo at the level of a deity. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and was slightly surprised. There were at least hundreds of thousands of bamboos in the entire bamboo forest. The lowest level of these bamboos were at the demigod level. There were even quite a number of divine-level bamboos. The greater world is a dazzling place. Wang Xian could not help but sigh in his heart. Teacher Wang Xian, you can go to the place I brought you to tomorrow morning. I will introduce you to the other teachers then. Director Jean said to him. Wang Xian nodded his head and left after exchanging a few words with him. He entered the courtyard and swept his gaze across the surroundings. A satisfied look appeared on his face. Although it was not as good as the Flux Point Peak, it was still a pretty good place to live. As for the amount of spiritual energy, Wang Xian did not care much about it. To him, if he wanted to improve quickly, devouring resources was the fastest way. Wang Xian took out some books that he had bought along the way about the Mysterious Sky Territory and the Mysterious Sky Academy and started to read them carefully. There were no days and nights in the Tianzi continent. However, they were still divided into days and nights according to time. After one night, Wang Xian walked towards a square that Director Jean had brought him to yesterday. When he arrived, he realized that there were already many people in the square. There were more than 10,000 young men and women standing in the middle of the square. At the front of the square stood more than 300 middle-aged and elderly people. One could sense from their aura that they were all god-level existences. Director Jean stood proudly in the middle of the square. This student, go and stand below immediately. When Wang Xian walked onto the stage, a middle-aged man at the edge of the square looked at him and shouted softly, "I'm the new teacher." Wang Xian was slightly taken aback as he said with a smile, "Oh." The middle-aged teacher was slightly taken aback. "Teacher Wang Xian, come over." At this moment, Director Jean, who was seated in the middle, saw Wang Xian. A smile appeared on his cold and dignified face. Ha! When the teachers saw this scene, they were filled with astonishment. They looked at Wang Xian in unison. Many of them were filled with astonishment. This is also a teacher. He's so young? The group of teachers were extremely puzzled. They were all array teachers. Now that they had all reached the stage of establishing laws, they were on par with the Eternal Lord. Wang Xian was dressed in black and there was a 7-colored divine dragon embroidered on his clothes. He looked rather domineering. However, with his young and tender face and aura, he could tell that this was a young man. He might be even younger than all the students present. Could he be a teacher? Yes, Director Jean. Wang Xian nodded and walked towards Director Jean. The teachers around him were looking at him in astonishment. Wang Xian nodded at them kindly and walked to the side of Director Jean. Teacher Wang Xian, this is the list of the freshmen this year. The 500 to 600 students at the front are the more outstanding students this year. Under normal circumstances, each teacher can choose 2 more outstanding students. The rest will be chosen according to the order. However, Teacher Wang Xian can choose his own students as he pleases. He can choose whichever student he likes. Director Jean said to Wang Xian. Wang Xian was slightly taken aback when he heard her words. All the teachers around him widened their eyes and looked over immediately. Director Jean, how can this be? An elder beside him frowned and said discontentedly. However, before he could finish his sentence, Director Jean raised her arm and signaled him to shut up. The old man was stunned. He was the descendant of the immortal godly king of the Shen Heaven domain after all. Although there were more than 10 generations between him and Shen Tianzi, he was still a direct descendant. He did not expect Director Jean to interrupt him directly. Usually, Director Jean would give him face. However, he was not stupid. When he saw that his words were interrupted, he looked at Wang Xian with a twinkle in his eyes. This is not good, I think it's better to proceed like the other teachers. Wang Xian knew that Dean Jean had opened the back door for him. He said in a slightly speechless manner, "It's all right. You are a new teacher and you are the oldest. I should take care of you." Dean Jean said nonchalantly. Some of the teachers around were slightly dazed. This kind of thing had never happened in the Xiantian Academy. Sometimes, in order to compete for an elite disciple, even the descendants of Shen Tianzi would be embarrassed. Now, this young man was actually allowed to choose his students. Damn it, if he were to choose 30 out of the 500 to 600 outstanding disciples, the academy would be at a huge disadvantage in the future. This? Wang Xian nodded his head helplessly. The students below also saw Wang Xian on the stage and heard the words of the teachers. This made many students dumbfounded. He is also a teacher. He is too young. Damn, he can choose his students directly. Wow, this is a teacher. The teacher of our Shentian Academy requires the strength of the eternal God Lord. Could it be that he can establish laws? This is too young and too handsome. My God, he is actually our teacher. Chapter 2241. 2241 under Teacher Wang. 2241. In front of the Shentian Academy's freshman square, more than 10,000 students were sizing up Wang Xian, who was standing in front of them. He was young, handsome, and had an extraordinary temperament. This made the eyes of many girls present shine. However, there were also many students who were filled with curiosity and doubt. Wang Xian was too young and he didn't look older than them. At such an age, he was qualified to be their teacher. One must know that they were considered geniuses in the entire mysterious sky territory. There are 30 students in a class. Student Wang Xian can choose any 30 of them. He can choose the more outstanding students. Director Jean said directly to Wang Xian. The corners of the teachers' mouths twitched. Their faces didn't look good. Was this kid a relative of Director Jean? It shouldn't be. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Wang Xian shook his head and looked ahead. My name is Wang Xian, one of the new teachers. If you are willing to be my student, please come forward. He said to all the students. Dean Jean and the teachers around him were slightly stunned when they saw his actions. They smiled faintly and didn't say anything. The more than 10,000 students below looked hesitant when they saw Wang Xian standing out. He's so young. Isn't he a little unreliable? Yeah, he said that he's a new teacher. He's definitely not as good as the previous teachers. He's too young. His actual combat experience is definitely not strong. Some of the boys mumbled softly. I'm willing. Teacher Wang Xian is simply too handsome. I'm also willing to become teacher's student. To be able to become a teacher of the Shantian Academy at such a young age is definitely the pride of the heavens. Even in the greater world, he would be the pride of the heavens. Some of the girls' eyes lit up as they spoke loudly and walked out. There were also some girls who thought that Wang Xian must be extraordinary to be able to become a teacher at such a young age. Hence they walked out as well. In an instant, 50 to 60 girls walked out. Among them there were quite a few who looked stunning. The girls were different from the boys. It was uncomfortable for the boys to find a teacher who was younger than them. However, the girls found it very interesting. There was no room for two tigers on a mountain unless it was a male and a female. Such a situation was very suitable here. When Wang Xian saw that the 40 to 50 people were all girls, the corner of his mouth twitched. The female students are pretty good. They are all more obedient. Among them, 3 of the girls are more talented. Director Jean, who was standing at the side, said with a smile on his face. I will choose 30 of you. Wang Xian looked at the 40 to 50 girls and shook his head. Then he waved his arm. In an instant, illusory pillars appeared around the group of girls. With a wave of his arm, 30 of them instantly appeared around 500 meters away. Water element formation, teleportation. Only an array master who had ignited 8 wisps of divine fire could achieve such a feat. On the other hand, Wang Xian's formation covered 40 to 50 people, but he had managed to accurately teleport 30 of them out. One could see how skilled he was in the art of formations. Teacher Wang Xian is really fast in setting up the formation. To be able to reach the level of a god lord at such a young age, he's really amazing. The old man who had spoken earlier said with a smile. Wang Xian smiled at him. To be able to cast an 8-wisp divine fire level formation in an instant, it seems like our teacher is really amazing. Wow, I'm starting to regret it. This teacher Wang Xian is not weak. Most importantly, the entire class is filled with girls. If I were to enter this class. The girls who were chosen were all excited when they saw Wang Xian's move. Some of the boys were also starting to regret it. The quality of these 30 girls was rather high. Alright, let's start distributing the students. After Wang Xian had chosen his students, the other teachers began to choose their own students as well. Soon, about 10,000 students were taken away by more than 300 teachers. These were not all the freshmen of this batch of Shantian Academy. They were only freshmen in the field of formations. There were about 40,000 to 50,000 freshmen in each batch. Among them, there were about 10,000 students who practiced formations. The rest were ordinary cultivators. Shantian Academy would recruit students every 10 years. There were about 40,000 to 50,000 students in each batch. There were a total of 30 batches of students. There were at least hundreds of thousands of students who died halfway through. There were about 800,000 to 900,000 students in the academy all year round. There were also some who went to the greater world to do missions. Wang Xian's classroom was located in a huge manor in the academy. There were places for students to stay in the manor as well. Each class occupied an area of a few kilometers. Wang Xian brought them to the luxurious training grounds and swept his gaze across the 30 girls. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Wang Xian. I will be your teacher in the future. If you have any questions in the future, you can come to me. In the first 3 days of every month I will stay here to teach you. If you have any questions you can ask me. I might not come over at other times. Now, you guys can introduce yourselves. Let's start with you. If you have any other questions, you can ask them directly. Wang Xian stood in front of the group of students and said calmly, "All right, teacher. My name is Huang Jiejia. Now, I have lit 2 wisps of divine fire. Hello, teacher. My name is..." One by one, the girls started to introduce themselves. Wang Xian remembered their names. Is there a problem? After the girls finished introducing themselves, Wang Xian asked indifferently, "Teacher, how old are you this year?" One of the girls rolled her eyes and suddenly asked, "Hee, let's not talk about this anymore. It would be a blow to all of you." Wang Xian shook his head. The girl who asked the question was a little disappointed. "Teacher, do you have a girlfriend?" A girl asked with a face full of anticipation. "Yes." Wang Xian answered directly. Some of the girls were embarrassed. "All right, I think you guys should stop asking. I'm going to teach you guys about formations now." Among you guys, Huang Jiejia, Situ Yen lit up 2 wisps of divine fire, Heavenly Oxygen lit up 3 wisps of divine fire, and the rest of you lit up 1 wisp of divine fire. Let me see the formations that the 3 of you girls have mastered. The rest of the girls who have mastered formations, let me see as well. The Academy stipulates that each level will teach 1 attack and 1 auxiliary formation. If you guys want to cultivate more formations, you can exchange them with your points. Wang Xian continued speaking to them. "Teacher, do you accept disciples? What do you think of me?" Huang Jiejia looked at him expectantly and said, "The teachers of the Shantian Academy would accept some of the more talented students as their disciples. They would impart some formations to them for free so that they could receive more guidance. Many students hoped that their teachers would take them in as their disciples, especially those without any background. I won't take them in for the time being. If any of the students have made greater progress, I will impart formations to all of you for free." Wang Xian said directly. "Oh." Huang Jiejia nodded her head slightly. The rest of the female students also nodded their heads slightly. Their faces also became serious. They were here to cultivate, not for fun. Naturally, their main focus was on cultivation. Although Wang Xian was here to pass the time and did not want to reject Shen Tianzi, he would not let his students down either. Chapter 2242. 2242 Underground Sea Monster. Although Wang Xian had never been a teacher, he had the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation behind him. Back then, the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation had taught him how to teach his students. The learning of formations was extremely difficult. It was much more difficult than ordinary cultivation. The most famous thing in Shantian Academy was formations. The power of formations was very strong. If a formation master with a wisp of divine fire was given enough time and sufficient treasures, the formation he set up could kill hundreds of people of the same level. This was like a trap. It could even kill 2 or 3 wisps of divine fire. The prerequisite was that the other party didn't know that there was a formation here. Huang Jiejia and Situ Yen had already lit up 2 wisps of divine fire and 3 wisps of divine fire with heavenly oxygen. They were considered outstanding in this batch and their backgrounds were pretty good too. The 3 of them had mastered quite a number of formations. Wang Xian didn't have any comments when he saw how many formations they had cast. The rest of the female students had yet to come into contact with God-level formations. Before I teach you formations, I want to tell you a few rules. You are my students. Fighting and scheming are prohibited among you. If you are found out, you will be expelled or killed immediately. As my students, I don't expect you to be kind to others. However, don't cross the bottom line. Just maintain your true self. When facing others, you are not allowed to bully the weak. However, if someone bullies you, stick together and look for me if you can't defeat them." Wang Xian said to them calmly. His body exuded the aura of a strong person. At this moment, the aura on Wang Xian's body underwent an earth-shattering change. He had been smiling earlier, but now, he looked down on them like a high and mighty king. When the 30 girls saw the change in Wang Xian's temperament, their expressions changed drastically. They were all shocked and terrified. "All right, I will teach you the first attack formation, the ice formation. You 3 girls, I will teach you 2 wisps of divine fire and 3 wisps of divine fire respectively." Wang Xian retracted his aura and waved his arm. The formation in front of him appeared. The formation was formed bit by bit. The formation of 1 wisp of divine fire involved millions of steps. Each step had to be done accurately. Otherwise, the formation would collapse instantly. Even for a godly state expert who had a photographic memory and could see 10 lines at a glance, it was still very difficult to use the spiritual energy to guide the energy in the surroundings. The slightest mistake would result in failure. The group of girls put away all their thoughts and listened with some respect. Next, let's start practicing. I will set up a few areas. The concentration of the spiritual energy and various attributes in the areas will be different. This way we can choose according to the conditions. Wang Xian spoke to them as he took out a simple array compass and set up a few arrays here. With the assistance of arrays, the speed of the cultivation of arrays would be much faster. Teacher, you actually know so many auxiliary arrays. When the group of girls saw that Wang Xian had set up more than a dozen auxiliary arrays, they were shocked. According to what they knew, an Eternal Lord level array formation could control at most 100 arrays. There were many differences between array masters and array masters. Some were good at attacking arrays, some were good at defending arrays, and some were good at supporting arrays. Of course, there were also formation masters who were more balanced. However, it was already very strong for an Eternal Lord to be able to control more than 100 formations. However, Wang Xian casually set up more than a dozen supporting formations, and it was the kind of formations that merely supported the formation master's cultivation. There were very few such formations. As far as they knew, there were no such formations in the Shantian Academy. Only the Spell Formation Guild had such a rare formation that could help spell formation masters to cultivate. Is it too much? Wang Xian shook his head. Alright, you guys can continue to cultivate here. I will stay here for 3 days every month and explain any problems to you within 3 days. There were more than 2,000 formations under his control now. All of them were accumulated by the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation. It wasn't difficult to cultivate this kind of auxiliary formation. The group of girls felt a chill in their hearts. Tianxiu, Huangjiajia, and Situ Yan's eyes sparkled as they scanned the formations one by one excitedly. They had some background in their family. It was also because of this that they knew how terrifying this auxiliary formation was. It was as if the entire Shantian Academy did not know about it. For a moment, Wang Xian made many of the girls look mysterious. After explaining the first formation to them, Wang Xian taught Huangjiajia, Situ, and Yan Tianxin, the 3 girls, a formation that was of a higher level. After teaching them, Wang Xian sat there leisurely and watched the girls cultivate one by one. The cultivation of the formation required him to train non-stop. The improvement of his strength required the girls to cultivate. The teachers in the academy were basically very idle. After watching them train for 3 days and 3 nights, Wang Xian clapped his hands and called them over. When a godly state expert trained, it was fine to not sleep or rest for a year. Teacher Wang, what's the matter? A group of girls walked over with some attentiveness, and their eyes were sparkling. Wang Xian was in a good mood as he looked at the group of pretty girls. There were 40 to 50 girls. Wang Xian had chosen them based on their looks out of selfishness. All of them were pretty good looking. At the very least, they were pleasing to the eye. I will stay here for 3 days every month. I have something to ask you. Wang Xian said to them. Teacher Wang, please ask. We will tell you everything we know. The group of girls answered immediately. Do you know much about the underground sea? And the greater world? Wang Xian asked with a twinkle in his eyes. The underground sea? The greater world? The group of girls were stunned. Teacher Wang, I live by the sea. I am more familiar with the underground sea. At this moment, a girl who looked a little weak opened her mouth and said, Oh, you Bing Bing, tell me? Wang Xian looked at the girl and asked immediately. He had a deep impression of this girl because she was a Murloc, a human who was born from the strong humans and the aquatic race. Our natural selection sea is connected to the underground sea. The Tianzi Sea covers 1/6 of the entire Tianzi continent, but the underground sea is as big as our Tianzi continent. There are all kinds of powerful sea monsters living in the Tianzi Sea. It seems that our Shantian Academy has many missions related to the underground sea. The northern edge of our Shantian Academy is the sea. It suppresses the sea monsters to prevent them from causing trouble. The mission pavilion of Shantian Academy has more detailed information. Many of our students need to go to the sea or the underground sea to increase their strength and earn resources quickly. Yu Bing Bing introduced. As for the greater world, there are also missions in our Shantian Academy. From our academy we can enter millions of planets. Don't you know about this, teacher? Yu Bing Bing added. I haven't been in the Tianzi continent for long. I'm not familiar with it. Wang Xian shook his head embarrassedly and looked towards the north. Alright, you guys cultivate first. I'll see you in a month. Chapter 2243. 2243-2243 in the underground sea, among the sea monsters. Our teacher Wang is so handsome and powerful. It would be great if I could become your teacher's wife. Don't even think about it. Why don't you see what kind of strength our teacher has and what kind of strength you have? Hey, don't you feel that our teacher is so mysterious? The aura he gives off is so powerful and majestic. We have really chosen the right teacher. That's right, especially the formation set up by our teacher. I've never heard of it before. It's easier to analyze the formation than to analyze it. The speed of his cultivation is more than 10 times faster than before. As they watched Wang Xian leave, the group of girls looked at his disappearing figure and started to chatter among themselves. They were still in their teenage years. Naturally, they couldn't help but have some fantasies when they met such an outstanding teacher. Even Huang Jiejia and the rest had sparkling eyes. After witnessing such an outstanding existence, how could they be interested in other men? Mission Pavilion. Wang Xian came to a mission pavilion in the Shantian Academy. The entire mission pavilion was huge, but there were not many people inside. Wang Xian went in and scanned the place. Other than the students who had submitted their missions, there was no one else. One could receive missions directly from the communication stone plate issued by the academy. They only needed to come here when they handed in their missions. The entire mission pavilion was solemn and solemn. Wang Xian walked up and bought a computer. As a world where technology and cultivation coexisted, the technological level of the Tianzi continent was very high. A computer was much more useful than a communication stone plate. As a teacher, Wang Xian processed one and pressed the computer. Immediately, information was reflected in front of him. This is really high-tech. Wang Xian looked at the lifelike scene in front of him and smiled. Leisure and entertainment, news from the Tianzi continent, the deeds of the Shantian Academy, missions from the underground sea and the greater world. There were all sorts of functions, and the functions were even more abundant than the computers in the past. Wang Xian casually clicked on them. He actually saw a concert and a live broadcast in the leisure and entertainment aspect. This broadened his horizons. The content of the live broadcast was very clear. Most of the live broadcasts were about adventures, battles, and entertainment. The news on the natural selection continent was also all kinds of information. There were information about the deaths of teachers and students in the mysterious sky domain, as well as information about the strong ones. Wang Xian clicked on the missions in the underground sea. He searched for the bones of various sea monsters, the ambergris of the dragon whale, and the missions to protect a certain place. There were all sorts of missions. There were more than 1,000 of them. As long as you had the ability, you could accept the missions. The rewards of the missions are not bad. Some of them can be exchanged for elixirs of the level of the Eternal Lord. However, they are useless to me. The sea monsters can increase their dragon energy by devouring them. Some of the divine herbs and divine trees can also increase their strength. Most of the missions are useless to them. Wang Xian took a look at the missions above and opened the information and strategies on the ocean of natural selection and the underground sea. This underground sea can help me level up quickly. Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling. With a move of his body, he immediately flew towards the north of the academy in the underground sea. Walala. Wang Xian flew for an hour before he arrived at the north of the academy. What is this? There was a huge platform in the north. It was a platform made of steel. Silver-white steel covered the surroundings of the ocean. The length of the platform was so long that one could not see the end of it. In front of the ocean that was made of steel, there were huge cannon barrels. The dark cannon barrels were emitting a terrifying energy. This was an energy cannon that was used to guard the coast and prevent the sea monsters from attacking. Such an energy cannon could be killed by even the Eternal God Lord. In the surrounding area, there were some students and teachers flying in and out of the sea. The underground sea was the natural enemy of the entire Tianzi continent. From time to time, there would be sea monsters flying out of the underground sea to launch devastating attacks on the human cities. As the sea monsters were underground, there were even immortal God King level sea monsters. The experts on the human side could not wipe them out. The humans of the Tianzi continent had been fighting against the sea monsters for countless of years. Standing on the silver-white platform in front of him, Wang Xian looked at the deep and dark ocean in front of him. In the sky there was a dark blue sky. Standing here, one could feel one's insignificance. One could also feel a sense of heroism. Ocean. Wang Xian's eyes slowly revealed a burning look. With a move of his body, he flew straight into the ocean. Splash. He felt exhilarated as he entered the bottom of the ocean. The ocean in the boundless galaxy could not be compared to the ocean here. The ocean here was the real ocean. Roar. Wang Xian let out a low roar and stared straight ahead. This time, entering the ocean gave him the same feeling as when he had just obtained the divine dragon system and stepped into the ocean. The dragon eyes of the yin-yang and 5 elements swept across the surroundings. There were many creatures on the seabed. Some ordinary fishes had the strength of transcendence and void interpretation. Bus. Rule. Wang Xian shouted softly. In an instant, all the aquatic creatures within a radius of 100 kilometers trembled. Come. He shouted softly and all the aquatic creatures within 100 kilometers immediately flew towards him. There were about 500,000 to 600,000 aquatic creatures within 100 kilometers. Among them there was even a god-level aquatic creature. This was the sea monster that people in the Tianzi continent were talking about. It was similar to some of the fish on Earth, but it was even more powerful and terrifying. Dragon head. Wang Xian had a thought. His head immediately turned into a huge dragon head and devoured all the sea monsters. The next upgrade will be much easier. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. He had already ignited 8 wisps of divine fire. He could directly control the sea monsters below the 8 wisps of divine fire. As long as he devoured more than 100 sea monsters at the level of the Eternal Lord, he would be able to upgrade once again. Go deep into the sea and swim like a dragon. Wang Xian mumbled. With a move of his body he flew deeper into the sea. His speed was very fast. After 5 to 6 hours of flying he entered the vast deep sea. The surrounding water was extremely deep. The bottom of the sea was bottomless. I can't go any deeper in this area. After all, there are immortal king-level sea monsters here. Wang Xian sensed his surroundings. Some immortal-level sea monsters were roaming around. He didn't dare to swim any further. In fact, it wasn't very safe here either. This was because the location below was the underground sea. No one could guarantee that there wouldn't be any terrifying sea monsters flying over. However, Wang Xian had the strength of someone who had comprehended 4 laws. Hence, he wasn't too afraid of them. Let's start the hunt. Wang Xian thought to himself as he scanned his surroundings with his extremely sharp eyes. Wang Xian moved his body and the aquatic creatures that were less than 6 wisps of divine fire within a radius of 100 kilometers trembled and flew towards him. Roar. Roar. However, his suppressive force also caused some of the sea monsters to be furious. The rule of the divine dragon was a provocation to them. Chapter 2244. 2244 2244 Underground Sea, Under the Sea Monsters. Roar. 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 In the southern part of the Tianzi Sea, the roars of some sea monsters could be heard within a radius of 100 kilometers. Even if they were in the sea, their roars could still be heard. The sea water could not stop their roars. However, Wang Xian could. The draconic aura covered an area of 100 kilometers and ruled over some aquatic creatures. At the same time, it also infuriated 2 sea monsters with the strength of 6 wisps of divine fire and above. Each of the 2 sea monsters had a body of 10,000 meters. They were like ancient sharks that were charging at Wang Xian. Their eyes were filled with blood as they stared at Wang Xian. A row of golden teeth were exposed and they were extremely violent. Golden-blooded explosive sharks. Wang Xian looked at the 2 violent sharks that were charging at him. A hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. He shook his body slightly and instantly transformed into a divine dragon that was 30,000 meters in size. Roar. Wang Xian let out a low roar. He opened his gigantic mouth and directly devoured the 2 golden blood sharks. Crack, crack. One by one, the 2 sea monsters that only had the strength of 7 wisps of divine fire were instantly devoured by Wang Xian. Roar, roar. He opened his mouth and all the aquatic creatures within 100 kilometers flew towards his mouth. At this location, there were 7 celestial-level sea monsters within 100 kilometers. Such a high density surprised even Wang Xian. Continue. Wang Xian swayed his dragon tail slightly and arrived 100 kilometers away in an instant. The dragon eyes of the yin-yang and 5 elements swept across the surroundings and the dragon aura spread out in all directions. Roar, roar, roar. Very soon, the sea monsters were swallowed into his stomach one by one. At such a speed Wang Xian was wandering around. In less than an hour, he had swallowed more than 200 celestial-level sea monsters. Although there are more than 200 of them, it's still not enough. Do you want to take a look at the bottom? Wang Xian looked at the extremely deep seabed. The bottom was like an endless abyss. The underground sea was divided into 10 layers. This division was made by an immortal king. The area above 10 million kilometers of the underground sea belonged to the surface of the sea. 10 million to 20 million kilometers belonged to the first layer of the underground sea. 20 million to 30 million kilometers was the second layer. By analogy, they reached the 10th layer. The deeper they went, the stronger the sea monster became. The area where Wang Xian was currently at was considered the first level. He had already dived below 10 million kilometers. 10 million kilometers was not 1,000 kilometers. When a demigod-level powerhouse entered this area, the water pressure would be able to crush him to death. I'll go down and take a look. Fortune comes from danger. As long as I advance to the level of the eternal God Lord, I'll be safer. Wang Xian thought to himself. He stared at the bottom and dived straight in. The sea bottom was pitch black, but to them, it was no different from daytime. Boom, boom, boom. However, at this moment, a violent rumbling sound came from the right. The energy covered an area of at least hundreds of thousands of kilometers. This was not the sky. To be able to cause such a commotion at the bottom of the sea, which was tens of millions of kilometers deep, it was definitely not an ordinary creature. Ha! Wang Xian immediately turned his head and looked to the right. On the right, a 1,000-meter-wide underwater machine with a metal blade was swimming at a terrifying speed. On the submarine-like machine, more than a dozen young men were standing on it with pale faces. At this moment, the few girls on it were on the verge of crying. They looked behind them and their bodies were trembling. It's over, how could we be so unlucky? We've already returned the sea monster cubs to them, why are they still attacking us? One of the young men said with trembling lips. They had accepted a mission to search for the sea monster cubs. After they had easily completed the mission, they wanted to continue searching for more cubs. Their luck was also very good. Coincidentally, they had encountered the turtle eggs of the twin-armored sea turtles. This made them extremely excited. Some twin-armored sea turtles could be upgraded to the eternal god realm. The value of the pet eggs of these twin-armored sea turtles was very high. After being nurtured for thousands of years, the lowest level of strength was the peak of the god realm. However, what they did not expect was to suddenly encounter the attacks of the twin-armored sea turtles. There were over 1,000 twin-armored sea turtles, and there were 5 or 6 god lords. They were only students of the Xiantian Academy. Even the strongest heaven's favorite had only ignited 8 wisps of divine fire. In front of the twin-armored sea turtles, they were like ants. If it weren't for the rich second generation among them who owned a sea god boat, they would have been finished long ago. Humans are not the rulers of the Tianzi continent or the entire greater world. If we can lend a hand among our own kind, we should lend a hand. Wang Xian looked to his right and thought of what Shen Tianzi had said. The uniform of the Xiantian Academy. As the sea god boat approached, Wang Xian narrowed his eyes slightly and saw the uniform on it. His body moved and immediately transformed into a human body. He looked at the twin-armored sea turtles that were chasing behind them and narrowed his eyes slightly. 6 twin-armored sea turtles of the first level of the Eternal Celestial Master. A smile appeared on his face. Bus, bus, bus. Wang Xian waved his arm and streams of water elemental energy shot into the void in front of him. He set up an attack formation, the Sea God's Bind. The Sea God's Bind was equivalent to a level 1 Eternal Lord level formation. However, this formation could trap level 2 Eternal Lord level sea monsters. The thousands of sea monsters in front of him could all be trapped. Bus. In 2 seconds, the formation was formed. Whoosh. At this moment, the sea god's boat had already arrived within 10 kilometers of Wang Xian. There's a person in front. Oh no, it's a young man. He's going to die too. On the sea god's boat, 2 young men saw Wang Xian and immediately reminded him loudly. Bus. However, at this moment, they suddenly felt that the sea god's boat beneath them was flying to the side uncontrollably. From where they were just now, they had formed 2 enormous tails that looked like the tails of a whale. The two tails were over 1,000 kilometers in size, and they surrounded the twin armored sea turtles behind them. This is an array formation. It's an array formation. When the dozen or so young men and women on the sea god ship saw this terrifying whale tail, their faces were filled with shock. It's the sea god bind. It's an eternal lord rank 1 sea god bind. We're saved. The group of youths widened their eyes in excitement. Boom. Two enormous whale tails surrounded the twin armored sea turtles from both sides. Boom. Boom. The powerful array formation was not only able to trap them, but the attacks from the whale tails also caused the twin armored sea turtles to scream in pain. Hiss, what a powerful force. Are they the experts of our heavenly academy? When the group of people saw the group of twin armored turtles that were chasing after them being restrained, their eyes were filled with awe. They looked at Wang Xian, who was standing in the middle of the ocean. He's so young. When they saw Wang Xian's face, everyone was astonished. Chapter 2245. 2245 The value of 2,245 pets. Dressed in black, the seven-colored divine dragon embroidered on his chest stood proudly in the ocean. At the front, the terrifying whale tail had completely trapped all the twin-armored sea turtles. Half of the sea turtles were killed by the power of the whale tail. The offensive power of the formation is really not weak. Wang Xian looked at the scene in front of him and smiled. He ignored the young men and women around him. He moved his body and entered the formation directly. Roar! 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 When Wang Xian entered the sea god's bind, the 6 double-armored sea turtles, who were at the first level of the Eternal Lord level, let out an angry roar. Their blood-red eyes stared at Wang Xian, filled with violent killing intent. Die! Wang Xian stretched out his right arm and transformed it into a dragon claw. With his current strength of 8 wisps of divine fire, it was a piece of cake for him to kill a level 1 Eternal Lord sea monster. Boom! The dragon claw went over, and the shell of a dual-armored sea turtle cracked instantly. Roar! Roar! The dual-armored sea turtle, who was at the level of the Eternal Lord, was covered in blood. A look of fear appeared on his face. Roar! Roar! He let out an extremely shrill scream as his body trembled slightly. Buzz! Wang Xian's expression changed slightly when he saw its figure flashing. In the next moment, the twin-armored sea turtles disappeared instantly. Roar! Roar! The other twin-armored sea turtles also let out an indignant and angry roar. Their figures disappeared quickly. Damn it! Wang Xian's expression turned ugly when he saw this scene. He had let them escape. It was very difficult to kill any creature that had reached the level of the Eternal God Lord. They could escape back to their eternal divine kingdom in a very short period of time. It was also because of this situation that the glorious land was created. It was very difficult to kill experts above the Eternal God Lord. With millions of years of life, they would naturally make this area even more glorious. This was also the reason why the word eternal was added before the word Lord. It was because they were very difficult to kill. Of course, it was very easy for the immortal king to kill the Eternal Lord. 6 Eternal Lord level twin-armored turtles escaped, leaving over 1,000 immortal level turtles. However, the combined value of these over 1,000 immortal level turtles was only equivalent to 1 Eternal Lord level turtle. Wang Xian didn't look too good. His head turned into a dragon's head and headed straight for the twin-armored turtles. Roar! Wang Xian let out a low roar. In less than 10 seconds he had devoured all the twin-armored turtles. I'm still short of 95% of my dragon energy to level up. It's still a little slow. He took a look at his attributes and thought to himself. What is this? The double-armored turtle was devoured. There were a few white eggs floating in front of him. Each egg was about 1 meter in size and contained life force. Wang Xian waved his arm and the system showed that the double-armored turtle eggs could grow to the peak of the godly state. It's a little useless. Wang Xian looked at the pet eggs and shook his head. Buzz! He waved his arm and the surrounding formations were withdrawn instantly. All the twin-armored sea turtles have been killed. Such a fast speed, so powerful. Outside, more than a dozen young men and women who were standing on the sea god's ship were shocked when they saw the formation being withdrawn and all the twin-armored sea turtles inside had disappeared. Let's go and thank Senior. A young man in the middle hesitated for a moment before controlling the sea god's ship to fly towards Wang Xian's position. Thank you for saving my life, Senior. More than a dozen people came over and cupped their hands. They looked at Wang Xian in awe and astonishment. No need. Wang Xian glanced at them and shook his head. He didn't mind it at all. It's the eggs of the twin-armored sea turtle. At this moment, a girl saw the pet eggs in front of Wang Xian and her face lit up with excitement. It's still 3. The few of them looked over and were visibly moved. Congratulations, Senior, for obtaining 3 such precious pet eggs. A young man said with a smile on his face. Oh. Wang Xian looked at them and then at the pet egg in front of him. Are these pet eggs at the peak of the godly state very valuable? He asked. Senior, you don't know? More than 10 people were slightly stunned. Senior, a peak divine realm pet egg can be raised to peak divine realm as long as it is properly nurtured. This is more than 10 times less than nurturing a peak divine realm expert. Moreover, raising a pet from a young age can build a great rapport with the owner. Although sea beasts are desolate beasts and their wildness is greater than their intelligence, raising them from a young age can reduce their wildness and increase their spirituality. A pet egg at the peak of the godly state is something that many people are willing to spend a lot of money to buy. Following that, more than a dozen people immediately spoke up. Oh, how much is this pet egg worth? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and asked. If it's a pet egg, it can be exchanged for about 10 pills of the same level. A young man in the middle spoke up. 10 pills? Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. Then if it's an adult sea monster pet, how much is it worth? He asked immediately. An adult sea monster pet. Sea monsters are difficult to tame when they reach adulthood. Of course, if it's a powerful beast tamer, it's possible to tame an adult sea monster. We are not very clear about the price of an adult sea monster, but I believe it's definitely not lower than the price of 50 pills of the same level. The young man estimated. 50 pills. Wang Xian's eyes lit up. Compared to the corpses of sea monsters of the same level, the amount of spiritual herbs and pills that could be absorbed by the dragon energy sea monsters should be around 2 to 3 times. However, even if it was 2 to 3 times, if he could tame and sell it, it would be 50 times. One of them was equivalent to a dozen to 20 sea monsters in the past. In other words, he could reduce the amount of resources by 10 to 20 times when he leveled up. Of course, the prerequisite was that Wang Xian had to tame the sea monsters. Wang Xian had already mastered beast taming when he was in the Transcendence continent. However, he wasn't lacking in resources and he didn't want to waste this time. I can tame and sell sea monsters myself. Wang Xian was quick-witted. This was a shortcut for him to increase his strength quickly. Senior, do you want to sell your pet egg? The young man who had been speaking hesitated for a moment before asking. I want to sell it. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Wang Xian replied indifferently. All right. Senior, I still have 40 divine herbs and elixirs of the peak of the godly state in my possession. I'll give them all to you as a token of my gratitude for saving your life. I am Hong Longwen from the Shantian Academy. May I know your name, Senior? The young man nodded his head excitedly. Wang Xian. Wang Xian said 2 words calmly and gave the pet egg to them. Senior, this is the elixir. The young man immediately handed the divine elixir to him. Wang Xian took a look at it and kept it with a wave of his arm. Then he turned around and left. More than 10 young men and women opened their mouths slightly when they saw Wang Xian leaving. Our luck is really good this time. If this senior didn't appear, we would be dead for sure. A young man said softly as he looked at Wang Xian's disappearing figure. That's right, Wang Xian. I don't think our Shantian Academy has such a name. Could it be from another faction? That can't be. All the array masters are in our academy. A few students were puzzled. Chapter 2246. 2246 Sea Monsters. Wang Xian didn't talk too much with the group of young men. When he learned that taming sea monsters could be exchanged for more resources, Wang Xian was tempted. With his current strength, he could directly rule over sea monsters below 8 wisps of divine fire. It was very easy to tame them. It would take some time to tame sea monsters above 8 wisps of divine fire. However, it was definitely worth it to sell the sea monsters. Looks like I have to change my strategy. Wang Xian was floating in the sea with a contemplative look on his face. Since he could obtain more resources by selling the sea monsters he tamed, he would sell the sea monsters he tamed. He opened the AI on his arm and started searching immediately. The value of the pets, the information of the beast tamer, how to sell the pets, and so on. Wang Xian looked up all kinds of information. Soon, all kinds of resources appeared. Beast tamers are even more special than array masters. Powerful beast tamers belong to the existence that all the major forces are fighting for. However, the job of beast tamer seems to be very difficult. It's even more difficult than array masters. It's very rare. It's also because it's rare. The value of all kinds of pet mounts is very high. Wang Xian read through the information one by one. In this vast world there were humans, demonic beasts, robots, and other powerful living creatures. Among intelligent creatures they were basically equal. For example, divine beasts and demonic beasts were as intelligent as humans. Under such circumstances, there were very few intelligent demonic beasts as human mounts and pets. Only desolate beasts and sea monsters would be used as mounts and pets. Furthermore, humans did not dare to make fey beasts their mounts and pets without absolute confidence. Mounts and pets were the closest combat partners. When fey beasts with intelligence fought, they might kill their masters for freedom. The tamed desolate beast sea monsters were different. They would acknowledge you as their boss and not dare to resist. Creatures without intelligence were sometimes more loyal than intelligent creatures. This was like the birth of a mechanical race. The mechanical race was created by robots created by humans with intelligence. After killing their masters, they would establish a huge mechanical race. In the natural selection continent, there were people who sold pet eggs and tamed mounts. They were sold on a street beside the Mystic Heaven Academy. Similarly, if there were a large number of mounts and pets, there would be forces that would come to purchase them after the news was released. In short, tamed pet mounts were definitely priceless in the greater world. Even if one were to get a few million of them, they would be able to digest them. This is good news. Wang Xian revealed a smile as he looked down. Continue to go deeper. However, before that, I have to find a way to trap the Eternal Lord Sea Monster. Wang Xian moved his body and flew deeper into the underground sea. His speed was very fast. Since he was in the middle of the sea, the water pressure could not cause any pressure to him. Wang Xian continued to go deeper into the sea as he stared at his surroundings vigilantly. Heaven formation, do you have any way to trap the Eternal Lord so that he cannot return to his divine kingdom in an instant? He asked Sky Array God Emperor as he swam. There is one way, but it will have to wait for you to level up. A Tier 4 array formation of the God Lord can interfere with space after it is set up. Even the Eternal God Lord cannot return to his own divine kingdom. This array formation is very rare. It is best not to set it up in front of too many people just in case. Emperor Chancheng replied. A formation that could restrict the Eternal Lord from entering the Divine Kingdom was definitely not something that other Eternal Lords wanted to see. Such a formation might arouse the killing intent of some people. Do I need to ignite another wisp of divine fire? Wang Xian frowned slightly. It would take a lot of time for him to ignite another wisp of divine fire. Especially if he couldn't capture the sea monsters of the Eternal Lord level, the speed of his improvement would be even slower. Forget it, I'll take it slow. Wang Xian sensed that he had entered the second level of the underground sea. He scanned his surroundings and his body trembled. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, the bodies of the sea monsters trembled and immediately flew towards him. There are 5 of them at the divine level. 2 of them are too low and won't fetch a good price. Wang Xian thought to himself as he swept his gaze across the sea monsters that were under his control. The value of a pet mount was higher than 7 wisps of divine fire, including 7 wisps of divine fire. The value of 1 or 2 wisps of divine fire was very low. After all, 1 or 2 wisps of divine fire was nothing in this resplendent land. 1 sea monster with 7 wisps of divine fire and 2 with 8 wisps. However, these are sea serpents, so they might have a lower value. Wang Xian thought to himself. With a wave of his arm, he stored all the sea monsters into the mother nest. Wang Xian immediately devoured all the other sea monsters. When he reached the second level of the underground sea, there were many more sea monsters. Most of them were stronger than the ones above. In less than half an hour, Wang Xian had collected more than 20 sea monsters with 7 wisps of divine fire, including those with more than 7 wisps. Wang Xian continued to fly in the underground sea. The dragon aura on his body spread out in a radius of 100 kilometers. Woo woo. However, all of a sudden, when his dragon aura swept out, a low roar came from below. Master level. When Wang Xian heard this low roar, a solemn expression appeared on his face. His gaze was fixed on the location below. Under the inspection of the dragon eyes of the yin-yang and 5 elements, 4 aquamarine sea monsters that looked like seahorses were staring at him with cold eyes. The might of a dragon could rule over weak aquatic creatures, but to those powerful creatures, this was a provocation. Sensing Wang Xian's provocation, 3 Eternal Lord-level sea monsters charged at him. This is the main sea monster of the Miaoma god. It's also a level 1 Eternal Lord-level sea monster. Wang Xian looked at the sea monster that was charging towards him and frowned slightly. It wasn't that the 3 main sea monsters of the Omen god level were very strong. It was just that the main sea monsters of the Eternal Master level would run away before they encountered a big crisis. Sometimes, the danger instinct of living creatures was even stronger than that of humans. The main sea monsters of the Eternal Master level could only escape by killing them instantly. Let's give it a try. My current strength is only 8 wisps of divine fire. I should be able to pretend to be a pig and eat a tiger. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled as he stared at the 3 sea monsters with a vigilant look on his face. Woo woo. The 3 sea monsters were not big in size. They were only 10 meters in size. Their aquamarine bodies were flowing with water. They had pieces of extremely sharp aquamarine scales. Wang Xian narrowed his eyes slightly and stood there without moving. His body was emitting the power of 8 wisps of divine fire. Woo woo. One of the main sea monsters increased its speed abruptly. An excited look shot out from its eyes. Humans had strong blood and qi. They were the favorite food of the sea monsters. Woo woo. The other 2 main sea monsters saw their companion increasing his speed abruptly. The other 2 growled in dissatisfaction and also increased their speed immediately. Chapter 2247. 2247 caught them all in one go. Woo woo. The 3 sea monsters stared at Wang Xian furiously. They had already treated Wang Xian as a prey. From the aura that Wang Xian had unleashed earlier, they could roughly sense it. This human was easy to bully and could be eaten. Wang Xian stared at the sea monsters that were charging at him and didn't take any action. He slowly gathered his strength and prepared to kill the 3 main sea monsters in one move. Woo woo. At this moment, the main sea monster that was at the forefront of the group opened its ghastly mouth. The teeth in its mouth were blood red in color. It looked like they were filled with blood. Bus. Seeing the 3 main sea monsters enter a range of 1,000 meters, Wang Xian moved his arm in the next moment. He stretched out his arm and instantly transformed it into a dragon claw. The gigantic dragon claw covered the entire main sea monster. The destructive energy contained in the dragon claw caused the seawater in the dragon claw to boil. Roar! Roar! Wang Xian's sudden burst of strength caused the main sea monster to reveal a look of fear. This sudden burst of strength was sufficient to fight against the level 4 main sea monster. They could be killed in an instant. The threat of death enveloped the 3 main sea monsters of the Omen god level. Their faces revealed a terrified expression. Bang! However, in the next moment, a terrifying dragon claw landed on the body of the main sea monster of the Omen god level at the front. In an instant, the body of the main sea monster of the Omen god level began to collapse. Roar! A shrill scream came from his mouth. The main sea monster of the Omen god level revealed a terrified expression. Roar! Roar! The other 2 sea monsters of the Eternal Lord level at the back were extremely terrified. Their figures were flickering. Trying to escape. Wang Xian's eyes revealed a cold expression. His arm suddenly accelerated. Bang! The dragon claw landed on the body of a sea monster with a flickering body. Large chunks of flesh and blood were caught in his hand. Ha! However, the next moment, the 2 sea monsters of the Eternal Lord disappeared instantly. One of them had more than half of its body caught in Wang Xian's hand. However, even though more than half of its body was captured, it still managed to escape. With the regenerative ability of the Eternal Lord, it would be able to fully recover within 10 days to half a month. Damn it, there's only one left. These Eternal Lord level sea monsters are all spiritual beings. Wang Xian looked at the flesh and blood in his hands and a corpse beside him. His expression was a little ugly. He instantly killed 1 main sea monster and 2 escaped. It was too difficult to kill an Eternal Lord level creature. Moreover, these sea monsters of the Eternal Lord level would run away whenever they were in danger. Now, it's difficult for me to kill them, let alone tame them. Wang Xian mumbled as he looked at the corpse beside him. He turned into a dragon head and devoured the main sea monster of the ancient horse god. He looked at the other half of the corpse and hesitated for a moment. Let's check it out. Wang Xian moved his arm and drew two formations in front of him. They were connected by blood. A mirror image. Bus. The two formations went down and soon, an image appeared in Wang Xian's vision. This was a part of the underground sea. This was a very strange place. The top part of the place was filled with soil and many aquatic plants were hanging below. In the image there was a row of caves located there. As for how many there were, Wang Xian didn't know. This is. Wang Xian squinted his eyes slightly. His eyes were sparkling. The lair of the sea monsters. Furthermore, it was the lair of a group of sea monsters. Regardless of whether it was the human eternal god or the sea monster's eternal god, they would hide their eternal kingdom in a safe place. As long as their eternal kingdom wasn't found, once they hid, they wouldn't be able to kill them. The eternal god lord would place his god country in a safe and hidden place. The undying emperor was even more powerful. The undying emperor could open up a dimension space, hence it was even harder for them to find his undying god country. The nest of the horse god lord sea monsters was obviously very safe too, and this was a small race's nest. It's about 100 million kilometers away from me. It's not too far away and this place should be. Wang Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. The place shown in the mirror should be beneath the natural selection continent. The underground sea was located beneath the natural selection continent, and those hanging seaweed should be the lair of the sea monsters. According to the information, the strength of the sea monster of the Lord of the Rolling Horse God should not exceed level 2 of the Lord of the Eternal God. Even if there are dozens or hundreds of them in a tribe, I can still kill them. Wang Xian pondered in his heart. Should I go and take a look? As long as I reach their lair and their eternal kingdom is there, they wouldn't be able to escape at all. I'll go and take a look. If there's any danger, I'll escape immediately. Wang Xian made up his mind. He moved his body and flew towards the south according to the blood connection formation. That was the area below the land mass of the Tianzi continent. The distance of 100 million kilometers was neither too close nor too far. With his speed, it would only take him 20 minutes if he didn't teleport. Very soon, a line that seemed to separate the land from the sea appeared in Wang Xian's line of sight. This place was about 20 million kilometers away from the ground. It was below the continental plate. Wang Xian stared ahead. Under the continent, there were seaweed floating in the air. There were also some strange corals that were emitting light. This caused other colors to appear on the pitch-black seabed. I still need to go about 20 million kilometers deeper. Wang Xian stared ahead. This area could be considered as the real underground sea area. Compared to this area, the area he was in just now was safer. Once he encountered danger here, it would be difficult for him to escape. I'm comparable to a god lord who has mastered 4 laws and a sea monster who is comparable to an eternal god lord of level 4. As long as my luck isn't too bad here, it shouldn't be a problem. Wang Xian moved slightly and concealed his figure as he flew forward. The dragon eyes of the yin-yang and 5 elements were constantly vigilant of everything around him. He didn't dare to get too close to the continental plate above him. Instead, he was located about 50 kilometers below him. As he kept walking forward, the occasional roars of the sea monsters could be heard from his surroundings. Wang Xian didn't dare to fly at full speed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, streams of black energy that looked like poisonous arrows shot towards Wang Xian from the sky. The dense number of poisonous arrows covered an area of a few hundred kilometers. Wang Xian's expression changed slightly. He immediately raised his head. The surroundings of his body were instantly enveloped by the yin and yang poles. In the sky, countless terrifying black poisonous arrows were aimed at him. At the center, an ice-cold sea snake with a triangular head swooped down. A level 3 sea monster. Wang Xian's pupils constricted. The taiji pattern around him spun and slowly covered the countless poisonous arrows. Bang, bang, bang. The poisonous arrows landed on the taiji pattern and produced a sound of collision. However, the poisonous arrows didn't dissipate completely. Instead, they turned into a dark green poisonous fog. The area within a few hundred kilometers was instantly covered by this dark green poisonous fog. Chapter 2248. 2248 made a huge profit. This is a poisonous fog. What a strong poison. In the underground sea, Wang Xian sensed the poisonous fog around him. A solemn expression appeared on his face. The poisonous fog even corroded the surrounding seawater. The entire area seemed to be a terrifying space. Humph. Wang Xian snorted coldly. The Taiji diagram floated around him and completely enveloped him, blocking the poisonous fog around him. He looked at the triangular-headed sea snake in the sky. Bus. 5 elements millstone, golden sand storm. Wang Xian growled and the 5 elements millstone appeared in the sky above him. In an instant, a terrifying array formation burst out from the 5 elements millstone. Golden sand storm was a level 3 array formation of the Eternal Lord. Once the array formation was set up, it could fight against level 4 Eternal Lord creatures. The 5 elements millstone was now used by Wang Xian as a formation compass. He had set up 5 formations of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth on it. The formation compass had the greatest advantage of using energy to form a formation during a battle. That was, it could be released immediately. This was similar to the moves of other experts. With a wave of his arm he could release it. Many formation masters would bring along a few formation compasses. This was because if a sudden battle broke out, the formation master would not be able to react in time. Although formation masters were strong, there was a prerequisite. They had to set up a formation. It would take some time to set up a formation. During this period of time, it was easy to be ambushed and killed. Wang Xian had gathered 5 formations on the 5 elements millstone. This could allow the 5 elements millstone to unleash an even more terrifying attack power. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the golden sandstorm formation erupted, the surrounding area within a few thousand kilometers was covered by a golden sand sea. The golden sand contained a terrifying penetrating force as it attacked the triangular-headed sea snake. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The speed of the golden sandstorm was 10 times faster than that of the triangular-headed sea snake. In an instant, drops of golden sand arrived in front of the triangular-headed sea snake. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The triangular-headed sea snake spat out a long tongue. The black mucus on it corroded the golden sand. Hiss, hiss, hiss. However, very soon, the triangular-headed sea snake revealed a look of panic in its cold triangular eyes. Bus. In the next moment, Wang Xian's terrifying dragon claw clawed at him. Chirp, chirp. An extremely urgent sound came from its mouth. Its figure started to turn illusory. The dragon claw swung over. Wang Xian was holding a 5-meter-long snake head in his hand. Meanwhile, the body of the triangular-headed sea snake had disappeared. It escaped again. Wang Xian grabbed the head of the snake and shook his head helplessly. This was the terrifying and tenacious vitality of the Eternal Lord. As long as he could escape with a body, a piece of flesh, or even a drop of fresh blood, he would not die. Although the head of the triangular-headed sea snake was cut off by Wang Xian, it was not dead. It was just severely injured. With its recovery ability, it would be able to recover completely in a few years. However, this head is equivalent to a level 1 corpse of an Eternal Lord. Wang Xian turned into a dragon head and devoured it directly. The surrounding space was still filled with poison. With a move of his body he stepped out of this space. Raising his head and looking at the land above, Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. This place was a little dangerous. Some powerful sea monsters would set up an ambush here. Those who were weaker or were not careful would have the chance to die here. Wang Xian showed a hesitant look. His strength was still a little weak. It was not very safe here. I will be safer when I truly break through to the realm of the Eternal Lord, he thought to himself. When he reached the realm of the Eternal Lord, he would be able to return to the Dragon Palace in an instant. His survival would be increased by dozens of times. Be careful. If I can't, I'll leave immediately, Wang Xian thought to himself as he continued to fly forward. This time he was even more careful than before. Especially the position above him, he was constantly on alert. In the next 10 million kilometers, Wang Xian encountered 2 more attacks. However, the sea monster that attacked him was not very strong. One of the sea monsters, a level 1 Eternal Lord, was killed by Wang Xian. We're here. The journey that took about 10 minutes took Wang Xian more than an hour. A notification came from the blood connection formation. Wang Xian looked forward. The sky was covered by seaweed. It was so dense that he couldn't see anything at a glance. However, under the sweeping gaze of the yin-yang five elements dragon eyes, Wang Xian saw many holes in the seaweed. It was very secretive. Ordinary sea monsters and humans that were at level 4 or 5 of the Master of Eternal God might not even be able to discover it. Sea monsters also had their own eternal kingdom. However, they were not called eternal kingdom but nests. There are more than 20 nests. Could it be that there are more than 20 Master of Miaoma sea monsters in there? Wang Xian's eyes lit up. He did not fly over rashly to attack. Instead, he checked his surroundings. Set up a formation and kill them all in one go. There were no other nests or other creatures in the surroundings. It was likely that this was the territory of the main sea monster of the Miaoma god. The other sea monsters wouldn't dare to come over. Wang Xian took out the 5 elements millstone and waved his arm. Buzz. On the 5 elements millstone, the water elemental divine dragon trembled slightly. Streams of aquamarine water elemental energy spread out in all directions. The water elemental energy was like a curtain in the sky, forming a water curtain space. Roar, roar. The moment the 5 elements millstone started to move, low roars were heard from the 20 over nests in the sky. Yin-yang diagram seal the path. Wang Xian's eyes lit up with excitement. With a wave of his arm, the power of the yin and yang poles spread out in the surroundings, sealing off the area of more than 10,000 kilometers. Roar, roar, roar. When the power of the yin and yang poles erupted, the chief sea monsters of the Miaoma god and the 20-odd nests also erupted completely. An incomparably violent roar came from within. Following that, Wang Xian saw 25 chief sea monsters of the Miaoma god appearing in front of the nest. Ta-ta-ta. The chief sea monsters of the Miaoma god in the largest nest in the center stepped on the water with their hooves, emitting waves of ripples. Soon, all the lord of the Miaoma sea monster stepped on the water with both of its hooves. Boom, boom, boom. It was as if a huge earthquake had occurred in the entire sea area. Waves of seawater surged violently from the bottom of the sea and attacked the sky screen of the formation. This time, where do you think you are going to escape to? Wang Xian's eyes revealed a cold look. He transformed into the body of a divine dragon and dashed toward the 25 lord of the Miaoma sea monsters while swaying his huge body. The strongest sea monster of the Master of the Flowing Horses was at level 2 of the Eternal Celestial Master. He could easily suppress it. Roar, roar, roar. A dragon roar came out from his mouth. At the same time he unleashed all of his strength. The dragon's might was overwhelming. The surging seawater flowed backward towards the group of sea monsters of the Master of the Flowing Horses. Roar, roar, roar. The overwhelming dragon's might caused the group of sea monsters of the Master of the Flowing Horses to panic. They shook their bodies uneasily. The Central Eternal God Lord Rank 2 Horse God Lord attacked Wang Xian restlessly. Chapter 2249. 2249 made a huge profit. Boom, boom, boom. The second-level Master Eternal Celestial Being's main sea monster was charging towards him. Behind him, the second-level Master Eternal Celestial Being's main sea monster did not hesitate at all. This was their lair. Even if they wanted to escape, there was nowhere for them to escape. Bang, 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 bang. Wang Xian saw 25 second-level Master Eternal Celestial Being's main sea monsters charging towards him. His dragon tail swept towards them. The continuous sounds of collisions rang out. The group of level 2 Eternal Celestial Master level sea monsters had no ability to resist at all. They were sent flying at an even faster speed. Their attacks couldn't even break through Wang Xian's defense. 5 elements restraint. Wang Xian moved his body and streams of energy were directed at the 20 sea monsters. Due to the suppression of their strength, the sea monsters didn't have much strength to resist. Whoa, whoa, whoa. A series of terrified sounds came from the mouth of the sea monsters. All of them were extremely flustered. Among them, there were 2 sea monsters that were escaping into their lair. Walala. Wang Xian waved his arm and the grayish chains wrapped around all of them. Trying to escape. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, and his eyes were filled with excitement. Among the 25 sea monsters, 3 of them had reached the second level of the Eternal Lord. If Wang Xian were to devour them immediately, his level would increase immediately. However, he did not do so. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of majestic dragon might suppress them, causing the sea monsters to tremble. Woo woo woo. They looked at Wang Xian in fear and begging for mercy. Their eyes were filled with respect and fear. Bang bang bang. Wang Xian flew to their side and waved his dragon claws. The powerful force caused them to tremble slightly. It might be difficult for others to become a beast tamer, but it wasn't difficult for Wang Xian. He suppressed them with his dragon might and divine dragon's blood and tamed them with his beast taming technique. With Wang Xian's strength, it wasn't too difficult for him to tame the desolate beast sea monsters that were weaker than him. Furthermore, his speed was very fast. Roar! After dripping the blood that contained the power of the divine dragon, half an hour later, the main sea monster of the omen god in front of it let out a weak growl. Wang Xian did the same thing. He used 10 hours to tame all 25 divine beasts of the omen god. Phew, the harvest is not bad. I can make a huge profit. Wang Xian stared at the 25 divine beasts in front of him. His eyes were burning with excitement. If he sold these divine beasts, he could ignite 9 wisps of divine fire. He wouldn't be too far away from reaching the level of Eternal Lord. Oh right, there's also their lair. Wang Xian moved his body and looked at the more than 20 caves above him. He moved his body and immediately flew into the holes one by one. This is primordial water? Primordial water of the Eternal Lord level. These are the bones of the other sea monsters. There are 3 of them that are of the Eternal Lord level. These bones can be used to forge divine weapons, or even eternal divine weapons. There are also baby sea monsters of the Master of the Rolling Horse God. There are 7 of them in total. I'm rich. After entering the nest of the Master of the Flowing Horse God, Wang Xian quickly found many treasures. Other than that, there were 7 baby sea monsters of the Master of the Flowing Horse God. Although the value of these babies was not as high as those tamed sea monsters of the Master of the Flowing Horse God, they were still worth a lot. Other than that, there was also an eternal elixir which was also worth a lot. Bring your nest into the mother nest. After Wang Xian had plundered all the good stuff, he ordered the group of sea monsters. Sea monsters were the natural enemies of humans in this dazzling place. They had no intelligence and were bloodthirsty. Not only did they kill each other, they also liked to devour human powerhouses. Although Wang Xian belonged to the Divine Dragon clan and the Aquatic clan, he did not have any qualms about this kind of wild aquatic clan. There was a saying in the competition between the water tribe creatures. The bigger fish would eat the smaller fish. It was a battle that was far more intense than that of humans. Let's go back and improve my strength first. Wang Xian did not stay here. He immediately flew out. This area was still too dangerous. Even if Wang Xian was careless, he would die. This was only the 2nd level of the underground sea. There were 10 levels in the entire underground sea. The deeper one went, the stronger the sea monsters became. The sea monsters in the entire Tianzi continent were stronger than humans. If it wasn't for the fact that the subterranean sea was more suitable for them to survive, the natural selection continent might have already been destroyed. The recent tens of millions of years had been slightly better. Humans had switched from technology to cultivation and were getting stronger and stronger. Wang Xian's speed was very fast. Whenever he encountered an attack, he would immediately dodge it. He didn't stay for long. Along the way, Wang Xian encountered a few waves of humans who came to the underground sea for an adventure. Some of them were experts at the level of the Eternal Lord while some of them were weak. Splash! Wang Xian rushed out of the water and flew straight into the sky. Only then did he let down his guard. It was much safer on the surface of the sea. He could see some cruise ships on the sea and flying cars and airplanes in the sky. Wang Xian flew into the sky and took out his artificial intelligence. A smile appeared on his face. Now he was going to sell the chief sea monster of the Miaoma god. The chief sea monster of the Miaoma god was not very big. It was about 10 meters in size and had the water attribute. It had reached the level of an eternal god. Their combat strength was not too big in the sea and the ground. It was just that they were closer to the sea. Such a pet mount was the ideal combat partner for many people. Tianhai Island, Pet Egg, Beast Taming Shop. Very soon Wang Xian found information one by one. The Heaven's Choice continent was considered a relatively good continent in the entire bright world and the greater world. There was an immortal god king overseeing it. Most of the planet continents were not as prosperous as the Tianzi continent. The Tianhai Island was an island in the northern waters of the Shen-Tian territory. At the same time, it was also one of the most prosperous trading grounds in the Shen-Tian territory. The entire island covered an area of 1,000 kilometers. People who entered the underground sea to search for treasures and hunt sea monsters would usually pass by here. Over time, a large number of people gathered here to trade. After 1,000,000 years, it had become a separate trading area. Even people from other parts of the Tianzi continent would come here to buy or sell items. There were pet eggs and beast taming shops here. As a continent with a population of 700 to 800 billion people, there were thousands of beast tamers in the entire continent, even though beast tamers were extremely rare. Naturally, there were beast taming shops too. Let's go to those beast taming shops and take a look. If I can sell it to them, it will save me a lot of trouble. Wang Xian moved his body and flew towards the Tianhai Island according to the navigation of the AI. Selling it directly to the pet shops and the beast tamers would save him a lot of time. As long as the price was not too low, Wang Xian would sell it. At the same time, he also wanted to check out the market. The Tianhai Island was not too far away from the northern coast of the Xintian Academy. After flying for more than 2 hours, Wang Xian saw a huge island. The entire island was neatly divided into 5 zones. There were divine herbs, pills, weapons, formations, cultivation techniques, and the central core zone. It was also known as the precious items zone. Chapter 2250. 2250 2250 for cooperation. Are you qualified? Go. Let's go to the central area. Wang Xian entered the entrance of the Tianhai Island and headed straight for the central area. There was a rule in the central area that the value of the items sold could not be lower than 6 wisps of divine fire. The value of pet eggs and tamed pets was relatively high. The entire Tianhai Island was very large. Even the central street was 1,000 meters wide. There were many luxurious shops on both sides. When Wang Xian entered the divine fire in the central area, the surroundings became even more luxurious. There were transparent glass windows and the storefronts of the shops were slightly sci-fi. The luxurious interior could be seen from the outside. Every shop was emitting a powerful energy. There were many people on the road. Many of them were driving luxury sports cars. Although there were many cars, it wouldn't be crowded. A car was directly stored in his interspatial ring. Wang Xian walked on the road. His walking speed was much slower. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He walked around and looked at some other items. There were humans and other intelligent races on the road. It was an eye-opener for Wang Xian. There's a pet shop ahead. After walking for more than 10 hours, Wang Xian saw a pet shop. The pet shop was called the Neon Pet Shop. It was a somewhat dreamy name. The entire pet shop was decorated in a dreamy manner. The pink lights inside looked a little out of the ordinary. Wang Xian entered the shop and just as he stepped into the door, he felt a light sweeping across his entire body. He felt as though he was being spied on. Ha! Wang Xian frowned slightly and looked to the side. Welcome. May I know what kind of pets you are buying? Are they for your friends or for yourself? Soon, a young and beautiful girl walked in and asked with a smile. Take a look. Wang Xian replied indifferently. Alright, please take a look. All the pets here are rare breeds and they are very beautiful. The beautiful waitress introduced the pets to Wang Xian. Wang Xian took a quick glance at them and left immediately. They were all fancy pets. Although they were at the godly state level, they were basically docile pets. They were similar to domestic kittens and puppies. Wang Xian did not stay any longer and left immediately. Not only were they expensive, but they were also pets that he admired. After leaving the shop, Wang Xian checked the AI and continued walking forward. Bang bang bang. At this moment, a series of booming sounds came from the front. The sound was not a battle but a firecracker. Wang Xian looked ahead. Beside a big shop, flowers were placed in a festive manner. This shop was much bigger than the surrounding shops. It occupied an area of at least 10,000 square meters. The entire shop was decorated extremely luxuriously. This was a newly opened shop. The most eye-catching part was the 2 lions in front of the shop. Each of the lions was 20 meters in size. They were lying on the ground, exuding a majestic aura. The 2 lions were comparable to the gods with 9 wisps of divine fire. House of War Beasts. This was the name of the shop. At this moment, many people in the surrounding rushed into the shop. There are god-level pets and such a precious war beast. Are you serious? There are god-level pets in this shop. There aren't many of them in the mysterious sky territory. Why would I lie to you? I heard that this shop is jointly opened by more than 10 beast tamers. There are master beast tamers behind them. Voices of discussion rang out one after another. Wang Xian's eyes flashed with interest. He immediately walked over and looked at the entrance of the shop. The style of the shop was slightly different from the surroundings. It had an ancient European style. No entry below 6 wisps of divine fire. If you want to enter, take out 100,000 divine stones. Today is the first day of the shop's official opening. There are no ornamental pets sold in the shop. All of them are war pets. The lowest 5 wisps of divine fire pets and the highest level 2 pets of the eternal God Lord. In addition, there are also many pets that have been tamed. You can cultivate their senses directly and become intimate war pets. A voice was heard as he approached the shop. Wang Xian walked into the shop. When he entered the shop, the feeling of being investigated came again. He took a glance and figured that it must be a kind of detector installed in all the shops. "Senior, may I know if you wish to purchase a war pet?" At this moment, among the more than 10 people who came in with Wang Xian, a waiter immediately walked toward a middle-aged man. She spoke with a warm expression. "Oh?" Wang Xian looked over and immediately sensed that middle-aged man who was at the level of the Eternal Lord. What was the use of the detector at the entrance of the shop? Wang Xian thought to himself. A god-level powerhouse was considered ordinary here. However, an Eternal Lord-level powerhouse could definitely be called a powerhouse. There was a huge gap between a god-level powerhouse and an Eternal Lord-level powerhouse. Although Wang Xian's strength could be comparable to a level 4 Eternal Lord-level powerhouse, no one would be able to tell unless he unleashed his strength. Upon entering, Wang Xian realized that there were many rooms inside. The transparent glass room was very large, and there were many war pets lying on the ground. This house of war pets is completely incomparable to the neon pet shop. It can indeed be called a war beast. There were a total of 50 to 60 war pets in the huge shop. The lowest level was 5 wisps of divine fire. There were cubs and tamed adult war pets. The price is about the same as the group of young men I saved. It might even be more expensive. Wang Xian looked at the prices of some war pets. However, the pets in the House of War Beasts were still ordinary in Wang Xian's eyes. There are actually 10 level 1 and level 2 Eternal Lord level pets upstairs. Oh my god, this House of War Pets is too powerful. There are actually so many powerful pets. Eternal Lord level pets are usually auctioned at the auction. I didn't expect there to be a total of 10 of them here. At this moment, an incredulous voice was heard from the surroundings, causing many people in the shop to be shocked. Wang Xian also raised his eyebrows slightly. If you want to go up to the second floor, you will need the strength of an Eternal Master level or 1,000,000 divine stones. A waiter in the shop reminded him. Some of the Eternal Master level powerhouses couldn't help but walk towards the second floor. As many people had said, such powerful war pets could only be seen in the auction house. This House of War Beasts was not simple. "This beauty, could you please call your manager? I want to discuss a collaboration with your boss." When Wang Xian heard the exclamations and discussions around him, his eyes flickered. He walked to a waiter and said, "Ha." The waiter who was called by Wang Xian was slightly stunned. He sized him up with a face full of astonishment. Our boss and the rest are outside. Why don't you go and look for our boss?" The female waiter hesitated for a moment and said to him, "All right." Wang Xian nodded and walked straight out. "You still want to negotiate with our boss even though you haven't reached the level of a god lord? Do you think that everyone is as outstanding as our boss and the rest?" Seeing Wang Xian really walking over, the waitress muttered softly. Chapter 2251. 2251-2251, are you qualified to talk about cooperation? Yes. Wang Xian could hear the muttering of the waiter clearly. Hearing her words, the corners of Wang Xian's mouth curled up slightly. It was very beneficial for them to be able to choose to cooperate with the House of War Beasts. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of trouble, he could have opened a shop himself. Once we open this House of War Beasts, only the Divine Pet Pavilion can compete with us in the entire Sky Sea Island in the future. There are more than 10 beast tamers and a master beast tamer behind the Pet God Pavilion. Compared to us, they are far inferior. In the future when the entire Sky Sea Island purchases war beasts, they will definitely come to our place first. We have to thank Master and the others for their support. Otherwise it would be a little difficult for us to get God-level pets. Now that Brother Feng has ignited 9 wisps of divine fire, our beast-taming skills have improved greatly. With Brother Feng holding the fort, the House of War Beasts will be incomparably powerful. Wang Xian walked towards the entrance of the shop. He saw a few young men standing there proudly and chatting excitedly. Beside them, more than a dozen waiters and small leaders dressed in the uniform of the shop stood at the side respectfully. Wang Xian adjusted his clothes and walked over immediately. Everyone, you guys are the owners of the House of War Beasts, right? I would like to discuss a collaboration with you guys. He walked straight over and spoke to the group of young men. Ha! The group of young men who were talking were slightly stunned. They turned around and looked at Wang Xian. The managers of the House of War Beasts were also slightly stunned. Little brother, do you have a collaboration with our House of War Beasts? If it's a small business, you can tell me directly. A middle-aged man walked over and said to Wang Xian with a smile on his face. The young men sized him up and didn't say a word. After entering their House of War Beasts, as long as one had reached the level of the Eternal Lord, there would be a waiter serving them one-on-one. Wang Xian came in alone. It was obvious that he had not reached the level of the Eternal God Lord. How could they talk about cooperation? They really did not take it to heart. It was not that they were arrogant. If they had not reached the level of the Eternal God Lord, they could not be considered as experts. They did not have much resources. I think it's better to talk to the bosses. My cooperation might be bigger. Wang Xian did not take their attitude to heart and continued talking. Oh, what kind of cooperation do you want to talk about? A young man saw that Wang Xian still wanted to talk to them and asked with a smile. Pets. I wonder if your House of War Beasts accepts pets? Wang Xian asked. Pets? Do you have pet eggs? The young man was interested. Pet cubs tamed war beasts. As Wang Xian spoke, he looked around and said, if it's convenient, we can go to a separate area to talk. He had a lot of pets in his hands, but there were a lot of people around him, so it was not convenient for him to take out his pets. A tamed war beast. The young man revealed a look of surprise. At this moment, a surprised voice sounded from outside. Some friends are here. Tianyuan Qingguang and the rest are here too. Kujiyan is here. She's actually here too. Let's go, let's go. At this moment, the excited voices of a few young men could be heard from the side. What? The young man who was conversing with Wang Xian turned his head and looked outside. Not far away, 30 to 40 young men and women were walking towards them. Among them, 2 young men and a girl were walking in the middle. The girl in the middle was wearing a white and blue dress. On her shoulder was a small blue fish with wings. The small fish was emitting a bright blue light. It surrounded the girl and made her look even more otherworldly. The small fish had 6 eyes. Although she had more eyes, she looked very beautiful. The girl's beauty attracted the attention of many people. Let's go. A few young men immediately went up to the 30 to 40 people with smiles on their faces. The young man who was talking to Wang Xian also followed him. Seeing the group of people leaving directly in front of him, Wang Xian frowned slightly. Those seem to be the heaven's favorites of our Shintian Academy. I know that girl. She seems to be called Kujiyan. She is the famous goddess of Shintian Academy. Did you see the pet cub on her shoulder? It's a 6-eyed flying fish. It's a god-level pet. It's very precious. This House of War Beasts seems to be opened by some prodigies of Shintian Academy's beast-taming school. Almost 90% of these prodigies can reach the level of eternal god level. The discussions around them started again. Wang Xian frowned and looked over. Not bad, Shijingyang Shengwan Jahan, you guys actually opened such a powerful pet shop. At the front, Tianyuan and the rest looked at the huge shop in astonishment. Congratulations. Kejian smiled charmingly and said to them. Haha, thank you for coming to support us. Let's go, we'll show you the biggest and most powerful pet eggs on Tianhai Island. Shengwan Jahan, who came up to them, raised his head slightly and said with a smile. The biggest and most powerful? You're not proud at all. A few young men next to him said with a smile. Ha, we have 10 Godlord level cubs and war beasts here. Let's go, I'll show you. I also hope that the senior and junior brothers will support us. Shi Jingyang smiled slightly and also said with a big smile. 10 Eternal God Lord level cubs? Everyone was slightly stunned, and a trace of shock flashed in their eyes. Then we have to go and take a look. Kujian's bright eyes flickered as she said with some anticipation. Goddess Jian, welcome. If you like any battle beast, I'll give you a discount. Everyone laughed and led them into the shop. Some of the people around looked over. The heavenly son of God of Shintian Academy would be a big shot in the entire Shintian domain in the future. People would pay attention to such a celebrity wherever he went. Everyone, I have some pets here. Do you have time to discuss a collaboration? Wang Xian saw them walking over. He hesitated for a moment and went up to greet them. Then he said to the young man who was talking to him just now. Oh. The young man who was talking to Wang Xian just now was slightly stunned. A look of hesitation appeared on his face. Kujian, Tianyuan, Tiangong, and the rest were stopped and looked over in confusion. If you have pets, our House of War Beasts can buy them at a 10% discount on the market price. We can also send people to sell them here. However, we will also charge 10%. This is also the price we will charge for pets in the future. It will be 0.5 points higher than the other shops. Alright, if you want to sell your pets, you can talk to the others in the shop. Excuse me. Shengguan Zhihan frowned slightly when he saw Wang Xian standing in front of him. This is an ordinary acquisition. I'm talking about cooperation. Wang Xian shook his head when he heard what he said. Cooperation. Shengguan Zhihan was stunned for a moment before he shook his head as well. You are not qualified to talk about cooperation. Let the elders in your family who are at the level of the Eternal Lord talk to us. Don't disturb our time. He spoke with slight contempt and walked straight ahead. He gently pushed Wang Xian, who was standing in front of him, with his arm and led the group of senior and junior brothers into the room. Chapter 2252. 2252-2252, are you qualified to talk about cooperation? Yes, Shengguan Zhihan. Only seniors at the level of the Eternal Lord are qualified to talk about cooperation with you. Very strong. In the shop of the House of War Beasts, Shengguan Zhihan led a group of young men and women into the shop. When they heard what Shengguan Zhihan said to Wang Xian, they said with a smile on their faces. Haha, we are in the war beast business. Only the strong and powerful beast tamers can obtain powerful war beasts. Without reaching the level of a god lord, how can there be any good war beasts? What qualifications do they have to cooperate with us? Shengguan Zhihan smiled nonchalantly. Around him, Shi Jingyang and the rest also nodded slightly. Their House of War Beasts had more than a dozen beast tamers, and they also had the help of their master. The war beasts and pets that they had prepared for the opening today could not be compared to any other house in the entire Tianhai Island. Even the Divine Pet Pavilion did not have as many powerful war beasts and pets as they did. If they wanted to talk about cooperation with them, they had to at least have the strength of an eternal God Lord. Otherwise, you are not qualified. You are right. I really envy you. With this House of War Beasts, you can get more resources in the future and advance to the eternal God Lord realm much faster than us. The young men who came to congratulate them nodded and said with slight envy. This made Shengguan Zhihan and the others look proud. Let's go, Jian. I'll bring you guys to see the war beast pets of the Eternal Lord level. We have a baby of the Eternal Lord level 2 here. Some of the young men fawned over the girls in the middle as they walked straight to the second floor. At the back, Wang Xian stood there in astonishment with a mocking look on his face. I don't have the qualifications. Wang Xian mumbled. Little brother, if you want to sell your pets, you can talk to us. The boss and the rest are a little busy. Please don't disturb our boss, we can handle it. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked to Wang Xian's side and said faintly. A young man who had yet to reach the level of a god lord. Not to mention that his boss didn't believe that he could have any powerful pets, even he didn't take it to heart. If it wasn't for his work, he might not even bother with Wang Xian. Hee. Wang Xian chuckled and walked straight out. Humph. Seeing how rude Wang Xian was, the middle-aged man frowned and snorted in dissatisfaction. Initially, I was thinking of cooperating with you guys. If you guys help me sell it, I can also help you guys gain fame. Now. Wang Xian walked out of the House of War Beast. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he scanned his surroundings. Why don't I open my own shop? However, it will be a little more troublesome this way. Forget it. If it's troublesome, so be it. At the very least, nothing else will happen. In the future, if the reputation of the shop starts to rise, I can totally sell it through the AI. If it's troublesome, it will be a little more troublesome in the early stages. It might not take more than a few days. Wang Xian mumbled and walked straight to the opposite location. It was unknown if it was a coincidence or his luck. There was an empty shop at the opposite location. It was written on the shop for rent. Contact via the AI. Wang Xian walked to the opposite side. The interior of the shop was not very big. It was only about 1,000 square meters. This shop was considered a very ordinary small shop in the central area. He took out the artificial intelligence system and immediately scanned the contact information on it. Through the artificial intelligence system, Wang Xian waited there for 5 minutes. The business of the House of War Beasts across the street was very good. There were many people gathered at the entrance. Some eternal masters who had rushed over after hearing the news entered with curiosity and anticipation. Although there are quite a number of eternal masters, they are much worse than the ones I have. The corners of Wang Xian's mouth curled up slightly. Sir, would you like to rent this shop? At this moment, a staff member from the Sky Sea Island walked over. He looked around with a smile and asked Wang Xian tentatively. Yes, I was the one who informed you. How much is the rent for this shop? Wang Xian nodded his head. Sir, this is the central area of the Sky Sea Island. The rent is relatively high. After chatting with the staff of the Tianhai Island, Wang Xian immediately paid the rental fee of 100,000 divine stones. 100,000 divine stones was not a small sum. The grade of divine stones was much higher than spirit stones. In this bright land, divine stones were the currency of the greater world. 100,000 divine stones could buy a pet with 6 wisps of divine fire. Wang Xian did not have divine stones, but he had some divine pills in his hands. They were also considered a common currency. If it weren't for you guys, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. You guys are really unlucky. Wang Xian looked at the location opposite him indifferently. He entered the shop and took a look around. In the past, this shop sold clothes. Of course, they weren't ordinary clothes. Instead, they were clothes made from the skins and fur of sea monsters and wild beasts that were at the godly state or even the eternal divine lord level. But Wang Xian waved his arm. A simple modification was very easy for Wang Xian. The use of the 5 elements energy would soon change the inside of the shop. Wang Xian walked to the entrance of the shop and looked at the signboard on it. Splash. He waved his arm to remove it and took out a piece of metal from his interspatial ring. But Wang Xian waved his arm and placed the signboard on it. With a wave of his hand, 4 big words appeared on it. Dragon Palace's War Pet Shop. From the outside, the Dragon Palace's War Pet Shop looked ordinary. On the opposite side, it occupied an area of over 10,000 square meters and had the appearance of an ancient European luxurious building. There were clusters of fresh flowers placed at the entrance. Compared to the 2 powerful lions on the left and right, the difference was dozens of times. Wang Xian had set up the shop. It didn't have any special features nor was it eye-catching. Only passers-by could see some of it. It's pretty easy to attract people. Wang Xian revealed a look of confidence on his face. He entered the shop and released the main sea monsters from the mother nest one by one. There were a total of 25 of them, including the 7 pups. Fortunately, these main sea monsters weren't very big. They were about 10 meters in size and the height of the shop was very high. It was totally possible. A few of the careful main sea monsters were much smaller. They were only about 1 to 2 meters in size and they looked rather cute. Other than these high-level ones, there were also some low-level sea monsters and war pets. There were more than a dozen sea snakes and sea turtles. The 2 of you go to the entrance and attract customers. Wang Xian ordered the 2 sea monsters. Roar. The 2 first-level Eternal Master-level sea monsters let out a low roar and obediently walked to the entrance of the shop and lay there. Holy shit, these are the rank 1 Eternal Master sea monsters. Holy shit, be careful. That's not right, why are they lying here? These 2 sea monsters have been tamed, and the mature rank 1 Eternal Master sea monsters have been tamed? Holy shit, stay away, these are god-level sea monsters, Dragon Palace battle pets? What's going on? Are they battle pets sold in this pet shop? As soon as the 2 sea monsters walked out, more than 10 passers-by broke out in cold sweat. This was an eternal godlord level sea monster in the underground sea. Chapter 2253. 2253 Dragon Palace's War Pets. As soon as they arrived, they saw two eternal god-level sea monsters walking out of the shop. These people were not very strong. The highest among them had only lit 5 wisps of divine fire. They almost wet their pants when they saw the eternal god-level sea monsters. If not for the 2 sea monsters lying on the ground, they might have run away. Now that they saw them lying quietly at the entrance of the shop, they looked at the shop behind the 2 eternal god-level war pets. Dragon Palace War Pets. This pet shop is so awesome. It has tamed 2 adult eternal god-level war pets and is lying at the entrance to attract customers. There are only 2 9 divine fire war pets lying at the entrance of the House of War Beasts that just opened. This is a god-level pet shop. Is this shop even more awesome than the House of War Beasts across the street? It's already very powerful for a pet shop to have a godlord level pet shop. Let's go in and take a look. They hesitated for a moment and walked into the shop. They carefully looked at the 2 sea monsters lying at the door. After seeing that they didn't make any movements, they walked to the door. When they got close to the shop, they felt a violent aura coming from inside. This made their expressions change slightly. This way. However, very soon, the people who came over widened their eyes and stared at the interior of the shop in disbelief. The shop was not very big, so they could see a part of it standing at the door. They saw many eternal god-level sea monsters lying inside. At a glance, there were at least a dozen of them. And this was where they could see. The terrifying aura and pressure in the shop made them tremble. Those above the eternal god lord realm or 3 million divine stones could enter, but others were forbidden to enter. At the entrance of the shop, there was a sign. There are many eternal god lord ranked battle pets inside, and there's such a requirement. Only eternal god lord ranked or 3 million divine stones worth people can enter. My goodness, when did this pet shop open? How could it be so powerful? How could there be so many war pets of the eternal lord rank in there? Shocked voices came from their mouths. They stood at the door and did not enter. They were not qualified to enter, and they did not dare to enter. However, this did not stop their curiosity and shock. This is the Master Sea Monster of the Rising Horse God, and this is the Master Sea Monster of the Rising Horse God that has been tamed. Hiss, when did such a powerful pet shop appear on this street? There are 2 outside. Look inside, there are at least a dozen of them. No, Fiske, look inside, there are still a few Master Sea Monsters of the Rising Horse God. Did they fucking take down the nest of the Master Sea Monster of the Rising Horse God? This Dragon Palace's war pet is too powerful. It's way more powerful than the House of War Beasts. Soon, the 2 sea monsters of the coming horses attracted the attention of everyone who passed by. When they arrived at the entrance of the shop, they were even more dumbfounded. The voices of discussion rang out. In less than 3 minutes, more than 100 people gathered around the shop. As time went by, more and more people gathered around the Dragon Palace's war pet shop. Some young people looked at the adult eternal god war pets with heated expressions. Some of them hesitated for a moment and began to contact their seniors. Eternal God Masters could be called experts. It was very difficult to fall at this level. An Eternal God Master had a lifespan of 1 million years. With an Eternal God Master in the family, they could at least stay safe for hundreds of thousands of years. It was not that easy to advance to the Eternal God Lord level. There were hundreds of millions of people in the entire natural selection continent, but there were only 70,000 to 80,000 Eternal God Lords. 70,000 to 80,000 Eternal God Lord experts might seem like a lot, but according to the population, there might only be 1 Eternal God Lord out of 10 million people. It was very difficult to nurture an Eternal God Lord level expert. To be able to obtain an adult Eternal God Lord level battle pet, the benefits were self-evident. As time passed, more and more people gathered here. In less than 10 minutes, more than 1,000 people had gathered around. What's going on the other side? Why did I hear someone say that there are 20 to 30 Eternal God level war pets there? No way. It's a lie. There are 2 approaching horse god level divine beasts lying on the other side of the door. There are 20 to 30 Eternal God level war pets in the Dragon Palace war pet shop that suddenly appeared. The House of War Beasts had just opened today, and it had been advertised for a long time. There were many people who came to their shop specially. Many people didn't even enter the shop. Now that they heard that there was a stronger pet shop across the street, some people didn't believe it at first. But later, when they noticed some strong people walking towards the shop, they had to believe it. The distance of 1,000 meters was not too far. Some of them could not help but go over and take a look. Some of them also ordered their subordinates to go over and take a look. The news spread very quickly. There were indeed 20 to 30 god-tier war pets in the Dragon Palace pet shop across the street. And they were the Miaoma sea monster. The Miaoma sea monster was of water attribute and had a body size of about 10 meters. It was an ideal mount, especially when it entered the underground sea. It was extremely suitable. After they received the news, there was an uproar. They immediately rushed to the opposite side. There's a price on the wall. It's a one-time price. You can stay in the shop for 10 minutes at most. If you don't want to buy it, you can leave immediately. At this moment, Wang Xian was sitting on a chair in the shop with a pot of tea beside him. He looked at the people who walked in and reminded them. The few Eternal Lord-level powerhouses who had just entered were slightly stunned when they heard Wang Xian's words. They looked at Wang Xian, who was sipping his tea at the side. "You are the owner of this place?" A middle-aged man asked with some doubt. "Yes." Wang Xian replied indifferently and didn't say anything else. 3 Eternal Lord-level second-level wild horse sea monsters, 22 Eternal Lord-level first-level wild horse sea monsters, and 7 pups. They must have found the lair of the wild horse. To be able to tame so many Lord-level sea monsters, he must be a powerful beast tamer master. May I know who he is? An old man looked around with a burning gaze and asked Wang Xian. "If you don't want to buy, get out." Wang Xian spat out these 5 words coldly. He didn't have the time to exchange pleasantries with them. There was no shortage of people who wanted to buy Eternal Lord-level battle pets. What was the point of talking so much with them? Ha! The old man was slightly stunned. His expression slowly turned ugly. "Young man, don't be so arrogant. Didn't your lord teach you to meet the master of eternal God?" Roar! The old man said with a bad expression. However, before he could finish his sentence, he immediately sensed that all the sea monsters surrounding the master of eternal God had locked onto him completely. A low roar came crashing over. The old man's expression changed and he quickly retreated outside. The rules and prices are written on the wall. Wang Xian looked at the other eternal masters who were on alert and reminded them lightly. Chapter 2254. 2254 Dragon Palace's War Pets. The little boss here is so powerful. He left the shop without buying anything for 10 minutes. Also, we don't accept divine stones. He only wants divine pills and corpses of the same level. How can he sell more than 30 Eternal Lord-level war pets at one time without a backer? There's no shortage of people to buy these war pets. They can be sold out in 2 days at most. It's not surprising that he's so powerful. However, the price of the battle pets in this shop is very suitable. It's much cheaper than the House of War Beasts across the street. At least 52 to 30 pills of the same level are needed there. Here we only need 50 pills. In the shop, 4 to 5 Eternal Lord-level powerhouses brought a few people along. When they saw the scene just now and the price rules on the wall, they discussed in a low voice. "Little brother, if you buy it, how about taming it?" A middle-aged man stared at a sea monster with a hint of interest and said to Wang Xian, "Taming the adult brambles gang. Raise the cubs yourself." Wang Xian said to the middle-aged man, "All right, I want one. I wonder when will you help me tame it?" The middle-aged man gritted his teeth and said, 10% of the deposit will be paid in 8 hours. I'll keep this for you. I'll help you tame it in 8 hours. Wang Xian thought for a moment and replied, "All right." The middle-aged man nodded and pointed to the one in front of him. "I'll take this one. Does his eternal kingdom still exist?" "Yes." Wang Xian nodded and waved at the main sea monster of the Omen God. The Omen God was lying in a corner of the room. Are you a beast tamer?" The middle-aged man was astonished when he saw the chief sea monster of the eternal celestial master listening to Wang Xian's words. Such a young man didn't look like a beast tamer no matter how he looked at it. To be able to tame the chief sea monster of the eternal celestial master level 2, one had to have at least the strength of an eternal level 3. In other words, one had to master 3 laws. Furthermore, he had to master the art of beast taming. It was much more difficult than the training of an array formation master. Such a young man was a beast-taming master. If he didn't believe that he had mastered 3 laws, the others wouldn't believe it either. "If you want to wait, you can go upstairs and sit down." Wang Xian didn't answer him. Instead he pointed upstairs. I need to exchange for some divine pills. The middle-aged man saw that he didn't answer and didn't ask any more questions. He took out the divine pills and handed them to Wang Xian before walking out. Since he was able to open such a pet shop, he wouldn't be greedy for 5 divine pills of the first level of the Eternal Lord. 3 second level Eternal Lord, 22 first level Eternal Lord, 7 first level Eternal Lord cubs, 50 pills of the same level when they reach adulthood. The cubs need 10. After the middle-aged man left the shop, the people outside also received the news and knew the price of the Dragon Palace War Pets. When the price was announced, many people around were stunned. This price is much cheaper than the War Beast house across the street, and most importantly, there are 25 adult war pets of the Eternal God Lord level. A total suppression. There are 10 Eternal God Lords in the War Beast house, but only 4 adult war pets and one of them is a snake. Discussions broke out. When the House of War Beasts opened just now, it was announced that it was very old, and it even opened the #1 pet shop on Sky Sea Island. Now that this Dragon Palace War Pet suddenly appeared, people naturally compared it. The difference was too big. Not only the quality of the War Pet, even the price could not compare to the Dragon Palace War Pet. Even a fool knew where to buy a War Pet. The discussions continued and more people gathered around. At the opposite House of War Beasts, some staff members also noticed the situation, but they didn't know what was happening here. Congratulations, senior son, this pet cub is given to your child. It will definitely grow up together with your child. When senior son's child reaches the Eternal God Lord realm, this cub will also reach the Eternal God Lord realm. Right at this moment, a burly middle-aged woman and a child walked out of the door of the House of War Beasts. The store manager of the House of War Beasts followed behind with a face full of enthusiasm and flattery. Ah, good. In the future, if you have a suitable war pet, let me know. The burly middle-aged man laughed and said loudly, Of course. The war beasts produced by our House of War Beasts are absolutely the best and most comprehensive. Senior son is welcome to visit us in the future. The store manager said respectfully and enthusiastically. The person in front of him was a big customer. There had been many experts in the family for several generations. This time they directly bought a level 1 Eternal God Lord cub for their son. It was so enviable. Oh, an expert bought a war beast from the House of War Beasts? And it's an Eternal God Lord level 1. That's not wise. The House of War Beasts is much more expensive than the other side. Exactly. That's a bit of a sucker. Besides, I think the baby sea monster of the Lord of the Approaching Horse God is quite suitable to be a mount. It's extremely cool and has an advantage when entering the underground sea. This expert might not know, but he's been killed. The few of them walked out of the shop under the respectful hospitality of the store manager and the waiter of the House of War Beasts, attracting the attention of some people. Hearing their conversation, some of the people around looked at the burly middle-aged man, looking like he was a sucker. Ha! The burly middle-aged man had comprehended 3 laws, so how could the discussions around him escape his ears? Hearing their discussions, he frowned slightly. What's the high price? Is there a pet shop across the street selling the baby sea monster of the divine horse god lord? He stared at a young man not far away and asked with a hint of imposing manner. Senior. The young man who was being stared at changed his face slightly and immediately called out respectfully. Senior, there is indeed a pet shop across the street called Dragon Palace War Pets. They have 20 to 30 war pets of the Eternal God Lord level, and the price is. He immediately said. When he talked about the price, he looked at the manager of the House of War Beasts and said, The price is much cheaper than the House of War Beasts. Much cheaper? 20 to 30 Eternal God Lord level war pets? The burly middle-aged man widened his eyes. Nonsense, which pet shop in the entire Sky Sea Island can be compared to our House of War Beasts? I'm warning you, don't spread rumors and frame us here, or don't blame our House of War Beasts for not being polite. When the shop manager of the House of War Beasts heard his words, an angry expression appeared on his face as he stared at him and said coldly, I didn't spread rumors and frame you. If you don't believe me, you can ask the people around you. When the young man saw the fierce shop manager of the House of War Beasts, he raised his head and said angrily, That's right, senior, you'll know when you go to the opposite side. The opposite side is indeed cheaper than you, and there are more eternal god lords than you. Some people around immediately echoed. This caused the store manager's expression to change, and he looked at the opposite side in disbelief. There were over 1,000 people gathered at the opposite side, and it was obviously not groundless. Let's go over. The burly middle-aged man said to his wife and son with a gloomy face, and walked straight ahead. Chapter 2255. 2255 was about to go out of business when it opened? Go. I heard that several seniors have bought war pets. This is an eternal god lord level 1. The horse god lord sea monster is more suitable as a mount. Some experts are also envious of it. If I have money I will buy one too. The threshold of this Dragon Palace war pet is too high. The eternal god lord level is 3 million divine stones, and I heard that it can only stay in the shop for 10 minutes. If you don't buy it, hurry up and leave. It's really awesome. The burly middle-aged man led his family over and listened to the discussions around him. He slowly frowned. He released his aura and everyone gathered in front of him was slightly shocked. A senior is coming. The faces of all the people blocking the shop changed slightly, and they hurriedly made way. Behind the burly middle-aged man's family, the manager of the House of War Beasts also followed. At this moment his face was a bit ugly. Especially when he heard the discussions of the people around him, his heart sank. He had a bad premonition. After entering the entrance of the store, the burly middle-aged man swept his gaze past the 2 eternal god lord rank 1 sea monsters lying quietly at the side. Then he walked straight into the store. After looking at the notification at the entrance, he looked inside. The store was not big. There were more than a dozen people inside. They were not all eternal god lord experts, but they were all brought in by the eternal god lord. More than a dozen eternal god master level Miaoma sea monsters could be seen lying inside, and a few cubs were walking around mischievously. Let's go in. The burly middle-aged man said to his wife and children beside him and walked straight in. Honey, look at the prices and rules on the wall. Once inside, the woman next to the burly middle-aged man pointed at the words on the wall and said, Price and rules. Price. Adult battle pet, 50 pills of the same level, cub, 10 pills. This price was written very clearly. He glanced around and saw many powerful sea monsters lying on the ground. There were no injuries on their bodies, and they were all in the realm of eternal divine lords. A young man was sitting there sipping tea, quietly sitting there. There was no waiter to serve him and no one to introduce him. He was very cool. The burly middle-aged man thought that this shop had the right to be so cool. There were more than 30 war pets of the Eternal Lord rank. It was probably very difficult to find a second shop in the entire Tianzi continent. Dad, this pony is so cute. I want this pony. The young boy next to the burly middle-aged man stared at a sea monster of the god lord of the approaching horse with a bright face. How is this possible? At this moment, the store manager of the House of War Beasts, who had followed the burly middle-aged man in, widened his eyes and looked around in disbelief. He couldn't help but exclaim. His gaze finally landed on the young man who was drinking tea. His face was filled with disbelief. It was him. How is this possible? How is this possible? Let's go. The burly middle-aged man turned around and glanced at him. Without saying anything, he walked straight out. The store manager of the House of War Beasts quivered and hurriedly followed behind. Senior son, listen to me. They are here. Shut up. The burly middle-aged man coldly spat out 2 words when he heard his words. He didn't want to say anything else. He was also at fault for buying at a loss. The war pet whelp he bought was an Eternal Lord Tier 1, which was equivalent to 54 Eternal Lord Tier 1 pills. For pills did not seem like a lot, but these were Eternal Lord Tier pills which were very valuable. It was just that the value of the pet whelp was too high, which made the pills appear cheap. Even an Eternal Lord Tier 1 powerhouse would not be willing to casually consume pills of this level. A pill worth hundreds of thousands of divine stones? What a joke. The burly middle-aged man did not want to say anything. After all, he had just bought it less than 5 minutes ago. Otherwise he would really be taken as a sucker. He was not someone to be bullied. The burly middle-aged man walked towards the House of War Beasts with a sullen face. The store manager of the House of War Beasts wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and immediately followed behind. He did not dare to say anything now. The other party was an Eternal God Lord level expert. For Eternal God Lord level 1 elixirs could buy several of his lives. The burly middle-aged man entered the House of War Beasts and walked straight to the second floor. Haha, Shengguan Zhihan, Shi Xingyang, Eternal God Lord level war pets. Tiangong Tianyuan and the other two brothers bought another one. You sold 2 today. It's a big deal. What big deal? I sold the Tiangong Tianyuan brothers at a discount. It's a big loss. This price is only for the 2 brothers. Haha, you're very particular. Today the 2 of us will treat you. The burly middle-aged man had just entered the second floor when he heard voices talking. His face didn't have the slightest fluctuation as he walked toward Shengguan Zhihan and the others. Senior son, why are you back? Do you need anything? Shi Xingyang was the first to notice him coming over. His face was filled with confusion, but he still spoke enthusiastically. We don't want this billow bear. Please return the divine stones. The burly middle-aged man handed the young cub that the woman was carrying to them and said coldly, What's wrong, senior son? The cubs of the pet shop opposite are cheaper than yours by more than 1,000,000 divine stones. I'm not a sucker. I'm withdrawing. Shi Xingyang opened his mouth and said, but was immediately interrupted by the burly middle-aged man. Shengguan Zhihan and Tiangong Tianyuan were slightly stunned. There was shock and astonishment on their faces. How could it be, senior son? Our prices are very fair, and we have 10 to choose from. How could it be? Alright, the other party has 20 to 30 divine stones. I have bought them for less than 5 minutes. You can check them and return them. Shengguan Zhihan quickly went forward to explain, but he was still interrupted by him this time. Moreover, this time, the burly middle-aged man's tone was a little cold. His divine stones did not come from a strong wind. More than 1,000,000 divine stones was not a small amount of money. 20 to 30? That's impossible. Besides, there is no pet shop across from us. Senior son, don't joke. Shi Xingyang immediately widened his eyes and said loudly, Boss, there is indeed a pet shop across from us. And this is real. The store manager quickly walked up and said with a pale face, What? Shi Xingyang and Shengguan Zhihan were in disbelief. They clearly didn't see a pet shop across the street this morning. How come there was one now? And there were 20 to 30 god lords. How could this be? They could get 10 because of their master and elders. Return the god stones first. However, you can go to the other store to have a look. With your price and quality, you won't be able to sell them. The burly middle-aged man said coldly from the side. Alright, senior, here you are. Shengguan Zhihan gritted his teeth and immediately returned the divine stone he had just received to him. He would talk about it after he understood the situation. Let's go and buy it from the other side. The burly middle-aged man snorted and directly walked out. Shengguan Zhihan, Shi Xingyang, and the others' faces were as gloomy as blood. Boss, that pet shop was opened by that young man, the young man who came to us for cooperation. At this moment, the manager of the House of War Beasts growled in a low voice with an uncertain expression. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.